All right, guys, we are back again on the Pat Stedman podcast interview series, and we have today Jim Clair. And guys don't know, like, I just got to say this before we jump into this whole thing. Jim and I go way back to early, I guess you could call PUA forums and Nick Sparks' private group, which was one of the better ones. And we're gonna get into all that stuff. But it was when I saw you on Twitter, I think it was maybe just 2 years ago or something like that. It's just like, it's such an incredible feeling because it's somebody who really impacts you. Like I always appreciated your posts so much in that forum, and then you disappeared, and it was like, you're always thinking about Jim. Where's Jim? And then you turn up in like my neck of the woods later on. So Jim, you've had a really interesting life, and we're gonna get into some of the stuff that you're doing now. But this journey, getting into PUA, and then you became a huge copywriting guy. I mean, I remember you going through like Gary Halbert, all the Gary Halbert sales letters and stuff. And you went through this whole copywriting kick, became super successful, and then was like, fuck this, I'm done with these guys. This is all scam stuff. And now it sounds like you're doing your own thing. You've got your own copywriting course coming out, a reading course coming out. So, I mean, that's a lot. So but yeah, just catch me up to speed a little bit on what's been happening.
Yeah, geez. I mean, we go back, what was it like? I mean, was it 2010 around then, or
I mean
11 or something?
2011 for sure. 2011 for sure. Like 11, 12, 13. I think.
You say forums, like it just flashes back all like the forums, I was like a part of. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of how I got into the copywriting, or I stumbled into it because I stumbled my way into game or the pickup stuff. So that's that was what, 2008 or something like that. And then I moved to Denver, and I was like, after my dad had passed, that was kind of a kickstart that got me into game. Had all this crazy stuff happen. A professional confidence artist I was engaged to was completely nutso. I didn't realize she was a professional con artist.
Do you feel comfortable sharing a bit about that?
Yeah, I can share that for sure. And then I got to Denver, and then I saw an ad. Like, I went back into the car business real briefly, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Right? I mean, where I was a joke. It was
like, this is your dad's company, right? Your dad had
so that sold in 2008.
Okay.
So that completely sold. And then I worked for another place. And my dad's death was pretty traumatic. So, and then I was what kind of got me into the game was in just this horrible relationship. And so she was like cheating on me and all these things, and it was awful. And then it was that's how I found a sales letter of how to get your ex back.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was this crazy note, and it worked. So I had stopped working because there was a lot of stuff going on with my family. And I stopped working, and I was just I wasn't really doing anything. I mean, it was just kind of like, all of this crazy stuff was happening with my family, this lawsuit stuff. So I was just like, fuck this, I'm just going to have fun. And then this sales letter, this game, this thing, it worked, right? So it was like this crazy, you left a note, like, what was the name of it? It was like John Alexander was the name of the guy, which is, when I got on ClickBank and started becoming copywriting, I couldn't find the guy. It was just like some random affiliate dude. And he was like the bottom of ClickBank. But somehow I found this letter, and it said, like, leave this note, like carelessly write this note. First, if you dumped her, which I did, act all needy. So I called her up and act needy. So okay, great. Then leave this note, but like how you thought she was ready for a relationship, but you realized she's too immature. There's a lot of big things happening in my life. Maybe at some point I'll tell her. But with respect, if you leave me alone for a while. Like, carelessly write it.
The note was not meant for her to see it, but you leave it out in a place where she can see it. Was that the?
Well, you're supposed to leave it out to see it, like you write it to her, but it says like I was kind of like I want to meet the guy who thought this up because it did work, right? I don't think it would work on a mature person. The mature person's like, what a fucking asshole leaves it on a Post-it note? Like, what's wrong with this guy? So like I wrote this thing on like a pink Post-it note, like real sloppy, and put it on the door because I knew she was gonna come get her stuff out of my place. And then it said in the instructions I had printed this thing out. Like I was real scared. Like I printed it out at work and like some guy just got fired and I went on his computer. Like they're never gonna catch me. You know, like, and so and I said, whatever happens, like if she starts calling, do not answer the phone. So it's like you have to not talk to her for at least 3 weeks. So then you're gonna send one message like after 3 weeks, and then don't speak to her still, and then after like this set time. So I mean, I left this note, but I mean at this time I was hurting because my dad had just passed, or relatively. I mean he'd passed about a month and a half or so, something like that before. So, and she kind of hijacked the emotional. Like I wasn't grieving my dad because she was cheating on me the night he was dying. Like he was. So just a horrible person. She was what it was like. Yeah, his death was like it was about 17 hours. He was just in agony, and so like I wasn't sleeping at all during this time. Like I was really struggling, and that's when I found this note. Like I was desperate, and I was like, I can't believe I'm losing her. This is my fault. Like I didn't know what was going on. Like she was playing all these games on me, and she was really manipulative. Calling to your dad's death is your fault. You're going to be nothing without your father. This kind of thing. And, I'm just 27, or I was like, oh my God. So I left this note, and all of a sudden she started calling. It's exactly how the binder said it was going to go, or not the binder, the course. I put it in a binder.
Oh, yeah. Because they actually used to give you binders sometimes back.
Right. This one I printed out. I put in a binder. It's like a black binder, and I'm like, I got kept that at my friend's house. Like we can't let anyone see this. And it worked. But I remember like that emotional switch. Like I went home that night. I mean, she was calling and like screaming and yelling. And I went home and I slept for like 15 or 16 hours.
Wait, so Jim, for the audience, for these guys, maybe some guys want to try this move.
Yeah. No.
So what exactly did the note say?
I mean, I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was something along the lines of, I understand the decision. I really thought you were ready for a relationship, but I realized, you're just too young. Mm-hmm. So that's on me. Something like that. So, I have something really big going on in my life right now, and I would really respect if you give me some space. Mm-hmm. Maybe some point in the future we could be friends again, but right now, give me space. Something like that.
Right.
So it played on the aspects, if I recall, the course was playing on the aspects of them being too immature, that you're too young for a long-term relationship. Then kind of that open loop of something really big just happened in my life. Mm-hmm. Maybe at some point we'll be friends. I respect if you leave me alone, and please leave me alone.
Which encourages this chase.
Yeah, kind of this push-pull of you're immature. I have something really big going right now, but leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then I think kind of the genius of it is the setting up to be really needy beforehand. Like you kind of had a scenario, like if you got dumped, just leave the note. Mm-hmm. But if you dumped her and want her back or something, then get really needy. Mm-hmm. And then kind of imply maybe you're on a date. So it's kind of these mental games.
Yeah.
Like you call me up and I'd be like, I'm going out right now. And who are you seeing? Who are you seeing? So, but it worked. And the other thing, the crazy thing about it was a lot of it after that, and I think it was directionally right. It was about kind of getting yourself in order a little bit, like become a high value man. I probably didn't say that as poignantly, like become a high value man, but it was kind of become, do something else than fret about her kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was a no, but I wonder now if it would work with, like a high value woman. I don't know if it would really work.
She probably wouldn't call for 3 weeks. Like there might be some modification with it where she might send like a message or two, but it wouldn't be that sort of like frantic kind of stuff going on.
Right. And a high value man likely is just going to end it a lot.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing.
Better. Like they're going to end it and understand space, and any conversation that probably happens in the meantime after some set of space is going to be a lot more fruitful. But back then, I mean, it was great for me because it really did switch that emotional framework for me. Like I wasn't sleeping at all before that. And I was in a pretty bad place. It was just, when I get stressed out, I just can't sleep, I can't eat. I lost something like 50 pounds after my dad died. I was like 140 some odd pounds. Like one of my best friends flew out and was like, dude, you gotta eat, man. And it was just like craziness. So it was like this perfect fit, this perfect storm that just worked. Mm-hmm. And then how it worked and almost exactly like scripted out, I was like, oh my God. And that was from there, I was like, I gotta study all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So 3 weeks go by, and then what happened?
So 3 weeks went by. I remember I was in Chicago with my cousin, and I texted her. It was like likely she's gonna try to like talk to you beforehand, and start trying to speak to you, and that was happening, right? So I texted this message like, "Hey, saw something today, reminded me of you," and that was it.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, and then as soon as I sent that, like not even a millisecond later, my phone is blowing up with her. She's blowing up with text messages. She's blowing up between like angry to really naughty messages. So like, it's like, just don't answer.
Yeah.
But I kind of noticed, like, after I was thinking about it, because it kind of he had these weird, I don't know if they're weird, these sort of affirmations that you write down, like you would take her off the pedestal. So I remember like during like this whole period, I was writing like, okay, and I think it's actually a pretty good exercise. It's not something you want to be doing for the rest of your life. I mean, I could see a red pill guy doing this forever or something. But like, what was it about her that you didn't like? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, start writing these things. What is it, bothers you, what's annoying about her, what's so I was writing these things down, and then it was kind of like, we kind of had challenges of get out and talk to different women. Mm-hmm. Get out and try to do one of your more favorite hobbies. And then, so for me, like those things were really good because I had never thought about those things. I had never really thought about taking a woman off a pedestal. I was only I was 27 at the time, and I was still, in some ways a shy guy, I guess you could say. So that kind of thing started kind of loosening her emotional grip on me. And it was great because I was kind of being able to see like, geez, during my dad's passing and right before, she was crazy. And I, like I just kind of thought she was hot because she watched porn.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. So I started kind of like loosening those kind of grasps. But then at the end, I think after 3 weeks of the message, it was something like, do you want to go out and have coffee? Like I only have an hour. Mm-hmm. And then I think I forget. It's like then you canceled it. Something like that. I think so. So I remember like I was gonna meet her, and then I was like, oh yeah, I can't make that. And at that point, I was like, I don't really know if I want to see her. And then she was again. Anyway.
You got to get over your ex, right?
Right. So, and that's like that was the good thing. Like I was kind of like I was getting over her in this way, and then she was at this point she was already dating someone else. And well, she was dating I don't know if there's still, I mean, it was so long ago, but Kate, who was transitioning into Blake. Like, I mean, this girl is also, I should have known before, like, I was kind of I was a white knight because she had a thing where she got off on cheating.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm going to teach her. So she was dating someone. I don't know if she was with that person then, or maybe it was a different, it might have been, she might have still been with a guy then. But either way, she hit me up. She's like, you know, I'm at a bachelorette party, like I'm in Connecticut, down, it was like Mohegan Sun, I think it was that. She's like, I want to drive up, we need to fuck. And I was like, yeah, and then it was like, whatever, if you show up, you show up. Like this total, like, you know, like I couldn't believe what I was saying. I was like, oh my God. And then sure enough, like an hour and a half later, there's this knock on my door. Mm-hmm. But like, even then the next morning, I was like, yeah, I'm done with this person. Yeah. Like, I'm done with this person. But I was so fascinated at like how that whole thing worked, almost like exactly how that binder said it was going to work, the binder I printed out. Mm-hmm. Like, I could not believe it. I mean, I still remember the day I put that note out was May 9th, 2008. Because that was like, because I'll never forget, I was driving around I was with my best friends at the time. We're driving around South Boston, seeing if she was going to call, because he wanted to see. So he was like, no way is she going to call like this. And all of a sudden she called, and we were like, and I had my car at the time was, you could play like the messages, whatever, out loud. And we're listening to the messages, and we started like cheering. So I think he was happy for me to like lose that emotional grip with her. And we were like throwing, like, yes. Like, you know, we're like listening, like cranking up tunes. I'm like, I can't believe it worked. And I just, like, from that moment on, I was hooked. Yeah. You know, and how she came back, she's like, I'm at a bachelorette party and she's dating someone else. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm the man.
It was a complete reversal in power.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the real selling point. I mean, they may have couched it in some other terms, but that was always the real selling point to the PUA world for guys. Didn't have power with women. This is how they could get it. So take me through what happened next in your journey. Because, I mean, I know for some guys, it's like, well, why are we going through Jim's whole journey here? But this is also the same journey that I went through. And I think it's that time period in particular, like pre-Red Pill, just sort of, I don't want to say, if I say golden age of PUA, then some older guy's going to say, no, it was really like the 90s or whatever. But
yeah, it was Mark Cunningham, bro.
Yeah.
Cool guy. But yeah, it was like the 90s, Ross Jeffries.
Let's just say that the game release, yeah, you had this like 5-6 year period of just so many different companies cropping up with so many different, it was so take us through this. Take us through the evolution. So you had this magic binder by John Alexander.
Yeah, had the magic binder, and it was funnily enough, it was a ClickBank product. I'm not sure if I got it on a ClickBank cart, but I remember it, you know, later looking it up, trying when I started working to look at it, I'm like, oh my God, it's on ClickBank. So I'm like, I have to find this guy, and you know, it's just a non-existent thing.
Yeah.
But so obviously, who knows? You probably got it from somewhere else or something, because it did have good psychology. I mean, that element, that very element of because it wasn't quite mystery. Like, I had read the game before, but this had that kind of push-pull, leave a whole bunch of curiosity. Like when she texted me, like, I'm driving up there, I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, before I'd be like, oh, great, let me, you know, like most guys are like, oh, should I get something for you? You know, I was just like, yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah. So what happened? So I think when it worked like that, you know, and then how it worked, and especially when I was in Chicago, the John Alexander, you know, like I bought one of the books. This one he actually sold like a physical book, and it had like the standard stock photo of like a woman with like the high heel or whatever, the garter stockings and high heels and a blonde and a phone. Like they all had that cover at that period of time. And so that one was about a pickup and approach. And I remember I was kind of trying it out in Chicago. And I was like, for me, I was so new to it. I didn't really understand it, but I could kind of see the dynamics of it a little bit. Like the book itself it was kind of vague, like didn't really have like opinion openers and stuff, but I was kind of, I was talking to my cousins, like, he had a girlfriend, so all of her friends, I was kind of like trying to like game them. And I was like, okay, I kind of see this things like shit tests, or they're going to test you. Like I kind of saw it, but the book wasn't really like doing it about, I could kind of notice things. I'm like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And like, I got like a couple of girls' numbers, but I didn't really like put it together because I was kind of overwhelmed. I was like, wow, this is kind of neat. And I was like, well, I got the girl's number. I don't live in Chicago. Like, I'm not coming back here. So when I got home and I saw this thing, like, I was kind of unconsciously realizing that I was losing, that girl was losing her emotional grip on me, that I had just kind of approached a couple of girls in Chicago, which is something I had never really done. And granted, it was a little bit of a safer environment because it was in kind of the circle, but I never before would have done that. So I got really fascinated by it, like how it was all working. And then after, she's like, I'm in a bachelorette party she's the maid of honor. Like she left, like the fact that she would leave and drive an hour and a half. I was like, this stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
So I like the next day after like I kicked her out, I downloaded like every podcast, and then I kind of went through where I was buying everything on that affiliate funnel. They must have been like, oh my God, this guy is awesome.
Yeah.
So I bought one or two. I downloaded every podcast. Once it's and the guys who kind of stood out right away to me was a guy named Nick Shane. I don't know if you remember him. Street Smart Dating.
No.
Yeah. So Nick Shane, Scott McKay, who's still around doing it actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Scott's a good guy. And then I don't remember the next one. And then, and the podcasts were like Scott had kind of a podcast that was pretty good, and he had a bunch of different guests on. So I remember there was this one, this was like a couple days after where it was like an opinion opener, where you put, like, I had my friend text me the text, and it was kind of like, you want to text it this way, like you want some of the language like all lowercase.
Yeah.
Name of the girl, Tiffany.
Like,
kind of less ambiguous name. So I went, and my buddy was shocked. I was like, all right, I got to see if this really works. So there was a bar in Boston at the time called the Grand Canal. And that was kind of a hot spot. So I lived basically across the street from these places. It was called the Bullfinch Triangle. And that was like a real hot spot for, with like the Harp and all these different bars. So it was like perfect, quote unquote, pickup or Sarge environment or whatever.
Sarge.
So I remember, and I couldn't believe I did this, and we'll touch why later, but there was a table full of girls. So the Grand Canal had just opened this outdoor patio because, the Big Dig had knocked out back. There wasn't much of a view. It was like, cool, you can drink outside in Boston. At this time, it was kind of like a novel thing. So I went to, there was a whole group of girls. I went with this opinion opener text. I'm like, you know what? And I had the whole thing ready. I'm like, yeah, hey, what's going on? I got it. Look, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just got this text, and you look like the kind of girls who could figure this out for me. And then so the answer was like, you had to look as who was the one who kind of answered sexual, and who was the one who didn't. So I handed the phone out, and they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, what was the day? Like, well, or no, it started with like, yeah, I mean, we walked through Boston Common, it seemed all right. Like I was in there, but I don't really know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, she just texted me this. So I hand the phone, and it's like, oh, it's Clair. And one girl's like, oh, that's a booty call. And I was like, you would think that. And that was, you had to like get that, like that kind of line out. And I was like, oh my God, you're so bad. So then I sat down, and then it was kind of like, okay, if one girl gives the naughty opener she's really into, there's probably going to be a girl who's going to be a little bit jealous of your text, or she's going to be a little bit more quiet. So I was kind of like looking around the table for these things, and I couldn't believe, like, I sat there, I'm like, oh my God, like this girl is the naughty girl, this girl is the shy girl, like this girl is like, oh, like what is this thing?
It was like seeing the Matrix. Yeah.
Right. And so I got some of their numbers. Like, I was like, oh yeah, cool. Maybe we go to Boston Common. And I couldn't, like, my buddy, his name was Mike. He's staring, like, his jaws on the floor, and I'm sitting there like, I can't believe this shit works. So that like the next day after that, I was like, oh man, I gotta get everything. So from that whole summer was a lot of fun. I got really good. So Nick Shane stuff really connected with me early, that kind of street smart stuff, because I tried some of the stuff like how to get her through hoops, or like, laborious sort of Ross Jeffries, like Keno Escalade. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm going up to girls and trying. I mean, I was trying everything. Like, that's kind of I think a good thing that I had. Like, oh, I'll just try this. We go like the Ross Jeffries, like, say slide a lot, slide inside. I'm like, man, I'm like a weirdo saying this shit. So
stuff, you had to be a very specific type of person, I think, to pull that kind of game off effectively.
Right. And then kind of meeting Ross later, it's like,
he's a strange guy. Yeah.
Very strange guy.
Yeah.
Very odd guy. But so I like Nick Shane stuff I thought was pretty good. It was really good for getting numbers, right? So the good thing was, soon after I did that opinion approach, I approached everything. I was like, day game, night game, get my state up, mindset. I mean, I was like, because I wasn't working at that time. So I would like go and walk through Boston Common and just approach. I would go to North End and just approach. I didn't even know how to get even past it. Like, I would just go up and say, like, I remember one guy was like, just go up and apologize for being a man real quick. And get him laughing. So I go up to this, like, I can't believe I did this. Like, I almost kicking myself. Like, there was this gorgeous girl walking in the Italian the North End, which is like Little Italy in Boston, or is Little Italy. And I was like, I'm sorry for being a man. She's like, you don't have to be so. Look at you. Oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, she's really into me. Like, what's the next step? I just like walked away. Like, she might still be thinking that. Like, what was that? Like, I just walked away. So I got really good at doing these kinds of opens and having no fear. And we would go constantly to, if my buddy Mike would come out, I would go constantly to the bars by me. And I would like talk to girls. And I had a pretty good rate of getting, I got really good at getting phone numbers. Really good at getting phone numbers. I mean, I was getting gamey because I started like, oh, I'm gonna peacock.
Yeah.
So I laid into that. Like, I got the Affliction shirts. I remember I got the PUA necklaces.
Mm-hmm.
Necklaces. Yeah, like one was like a choker and like draw attention to you. And another one was got like a bear claw or something with some Celtic design. I looked like such a douchebag walking around. I had huge belt buckles.
Yeah.
And the thing was, like, yeah, I would just go into a group of girls, and I would kind of start the opinion opener, or kind of, try these kinds of, like, it wouldn't even really do, or I'd kind of do like negs and things like that. Like, oh my God, what are you doing here? Like, how old are you? I'm like, what are you, like 40 or something? Like in this bar, like everyone's obviously like 21 to like 28, 25, right? And as soon as you say that to like an immature girl, it's like, oh my God. So I was really getting, like, Nick Shane kind of hit for me, but I noticed I was running up against an issue where I was just getting a lot of numbers. Like, I would do dumb tricks. Like, I got into Oh, I can tell your future. If here, write down the last 4 digits of your phone number. All right, fold. Write down your first name. Okay, fold it again. Now write down the first, 3 digits of your phone number. Okay, fold. Write down your last name. Okay, fold. And then write down your area code. All right, now hand me the paper, and I'll say, well, thanks for your number. And then like. Like I remember I would go to the Harp in Boston. There was always a line to go in, and I would go out and do that to like the girls I thought that were cute or hot. And like, oh my god, of course. And then I'd call them later, and then it wouldn't really like,
Right.
And
right.
any of the ones that like I went on a date with I'd be like, geez, this girl is just a dummy.
It's the same kind of stuff that you saw with like companies. Not trying to throw any direct shade, but I will. Simple pickup where they go out and they do these really bold cold approaches, and you see them get all these numbers, but those numbers are dead numbers, basically.
Yeah, and I noticed that I was running into that a lot. And then kind of what stuck out to me, like the more gamey stuff I was doing, I kind of realized. I mean, looking back on it now, I kind of understand what I was doing, but like I kind of realized like the girls who were probably more, who had a higher sense of self-worth at the time, or maybe more mature. Like I remember one girl, she was this gorgeous girl, and then talking to her, suddenly I was like, there's no game, right? There was like this really great connection back and forth. And then I was just like, she'd get a number. She's kind of like waiting for the number. I'm like, she's like, well, I'm going over here, and I'm going to be over here. She's like, would you want to come? And I was like, deer in the headlights, because it was outside of these connect the dots,
right,
sort of thing. Because I got really kind of dependent on getting numbers really fast. So I mean, I remember afterwards, like, geez, I really shot myself in the foot with that chick. Like, she was way more mature. She wasn't like, oh my god, tell me my future.
Yeah. I mean, and this was one of the problems with, and I'm not against it for guys to learn a few canned stuff, maybe, or like some basic stuff early on, just to get them used to interacting with women. But you have the problem of complexity stacking. So as you get to each subsequent stage in interaction, each subsequent stage of connection, trying to follow some formula becomes increasingly difficult. And and you end up getting more and more in your head, and you start to lose interactions at various stages. Because if you're actually going to be successful with a girl at the later stages, you have to be like authentic. You have to be real at a certain point, and not having this constant just like, what's the next step I need to take? What's the next step? Like looking outside of yourself for it. So the other thing I just say is that the paradox of a lot of this pickup stuff is with those younger girls, the more immature girls, it work more than it would with the more mature girls. But so a lot of PUA guys would say is that a bad thing, because they wanted to get like, the 18, 19, 20-year-old girl. So you started to have this, I think that set a lot of the seeds for stuff later on in the red pill, which, again, not entirely incorrect in terms of their inferences on women, but also very much of an overreach.
Right. Like I noticed, I was quick to notice, like, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of great stuff about using something canned is a great way if you're really shy. Because I was a pretty shy guy. And then I kind of bought into like, oh, you have to have a couple of drinks to work your guts up to go say hi. Or how a lot of guys in like cities would do it. You buy your blue shirt, your blue button-down shirt from, Milton's, and you go drink Bud Lights and you stand next to a girl for like an hour.
Yeah.
And like do like the creepy look over. But that's what some guys would do. But so it was great to get, like, I mean, I didn't realize later that I was more of a rare person that actually went out and approach. I mean, God knows how many approaches I actually did, and I did get dates. But that's a great thing you said about the complexity. The thing was like, okay, there was a great skill of learning that going on a date and then taking it to various different places. Like that's something I still kind of do. I mean, it's natural, but if I like the person, I want to extend the time. and I'll go to a few different places. Now, no more right now. I like, you know, it's very heavy vetting. Like, who is this person? And why are you here? Kind of thing. But if I like them, like, okay, well, let's spend a little bit of time and see, you know, kind of figure that out. But at that time, I didn't know that, right? So I didn't have that kind of aware of my values. So, but I noticed, even though I was doing all these approaches and getting a ton of phone numbers, I still noticed guys who clearly weren't studying game who would just go up and be like, hey, what's up? But those guys, like, they would physically escalate a lot faster. The girls would be touching them a lot more. Whereas I was kind of like, man, I'm getting into like, okay, now let's, you know, it's 3 indicators of interest. You know, now I got to jump through the hoop and I got to keep joking. So it was kind of like this kind of like this magician sort of, all right, I got to keep the plate spinning I got to keep this ball rolling of doing this. Now this is working. Now her friend's coming in. I mean, not entirely bad, but as soon as I got something natural, I was like, you know, then I'm like, you know, I'm doing all these things right and the reactions are going just right. But then this guy comes over, you know, Anthony from the North End is like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
And that was it. You know, and then but they would kind of have this natural thing. You know, she's like, oh, I buy a drink. So you give me a, you know, vodka, ton, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, these girls are like, oh, you're so bad. And I'm like, geez, what is, I mean, he's not studying game. So when I noticed that, that's what kind of led me back. Like, I still like Scott McKay's podcast. So I actually went down and saw him for like an event. And it was pretty good because he was trying to get me off of the routines, off of the canned stuff. And I kind of wish I listened to it then. But I kind of was like, oh, there's got to be something to it.
Yeah.
And then, but when I got back, I was kind of going more along the lines he was saying, and I was seeing a lot more success as far as like, okay, well, now this is not like I'm not running out trying to be a magician. I'm actually getting dates and it's going past, like I'm not running out, like I'm bringing myself. Because he was like, just watch the movie Fletch and don't worry about a whole lot. That's like the best flirting movie of all time.
Fletch, you said?
Fletch, yeah. And I agree. I think it is. He said something like that. And I watched Fletch, I'm like, yeah, this is a great movie. Not like.
Well, the other thing is that it's exhausting.
I mean, yes, extremely.
And I wonder, I'm curious what you think about this. Because you had all these obviously like spin-off guys with their own routines and stuff, but because this whole industry was basically blown out into the open, brought in all, you know, we can make money off of this.
Yeah.
From the book The Game, which is based on literally a magician. How much of this entire like early pickup kind of routine-based game is just derivative of the fact that Mystery was a magician and he did that because it worked for him, because he was used to doing routines and, you know, illusions. I mean, I wonder about that. Like,
yeah, no, I wonder that too, because there were some guys like Mystery was pretty good at it, and then even David D'Angelo, I mean Evan Pagan. Evan Pagan kind of took sales books at the time. Like if you read old school Tommy Hopkins, you know, Evan kind of takes that, but it's not as much trying to seek rapport. Evan was smart enough to kind of flip it on its head a little bit to understand that push-pull dynamic that works well with women. So if you would see like old sales books from the 80s and 90s and then kind of switch a few of the structures into much more of like, instead of like a pull, instead of like a kind of like a push, oh, then nice. Then so that kind of kick back and forth.
Yeah. You
realize that he took that. Yeah. The Mystery had a lot of the cold reading type stuff. Yeah, I mean, it definitely carried on like this sort of exhausting thing. And even the sales thing with like David D'Angelo, it gets exhausting with push pull. And it's forcing it. Like there's something to maybe learning that a little bit because it can be fun, but oh man, it gets exhausting.
100%. And I mean, I put out even just like a little thread about this recently. Cocky Funny was a huge impact for me.
Yeah.
Just because it lets you experience some degree of tension with a woman.
You're right, exactly.
It eventually runs its course. It's very uncalibrated. And like I blew tons of leads as a result of doing it. But I mean, maybe they wouldn't have been leads in the first place if I hadn't known how to create the tension. So I didn't really start to have, this was like 9 months into my sort of game journey. I didn't start to really have success until I was able to just kind of instinctively, with one girl in particular, who I had been doing this with, and we had a huge kind of tension between each other that even got nasty sometimes. And I just was suddenly like, we don't dislike each other. We really, we're really good friends. I just kind of like dropped it. And after that, she totally fell for me. Like it was interesting how that worked. It was like, maybe like I had started the fire, but I kept like, setting the sparks and then put it out, set the spark, put it out kind of thing, rather than let it actually be naturally progress. So anyway, so, okay, so continue. So you integrate some of Scott's stuff, you start to get dates.
Right. And also at that time I discovered David Shade. So
yeah. Phone sex.
Yeah, exactly. Hot.
I gotta find I have that someplace.
I've met David a couple of times. He's a cool guy. He loves game. He loves game, but there's something to him where he's just so determined. And he knows what he's talking about.
I mean, anybody, like, you have to say this about the OGs, the guys from the 80s and 90s. The fact that they would be in like classified ads in a newspaper, and do this kind of shit. I mean, for the guys who don't know, I don't even know if David Shade still produces stuff anymore, but he would. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You met him, but literally, like, he would do phone sex through like classified ads. Like,
he did. He's the real deal. I mean, because I was on his forum for a few years after I got on more after the con artist thing. But he like really studied, like it was all his notes, and like he was obsessed with game, but he was very determined about it. And I actually commend him because he kind of got thrown into the affiliate marketing thing. He's like, he felt his brand got really cheapened, and it did, and he pulled himself out and walked away from a lot of money that was coming in. But yeah, he did the phone sex thing because he was like a Mark Cunningham guy. That's kind of like Mark and Ross, and everyone kind of distanced themselves from Ross a little bit. But Scott's way, like, of me kind of taking back some of the routines started working better for me. Because Scott's like, and I didn't realize it. So he's like, you're a really good looking guy. He's like, you don't need to be doing all these, you're over gaming yourself. Like, you don't need to be doing all this stuff. He's like, you could probably just get away with a high.
Yeah.
And most women would be like, oh my God. And I just like, oh wait, you need to be like, you gotta plow through and IOIs. Like, so I started kind of seeing a little bit more actual success as far as getting past just getting, going out and getting like 30 phone numbers in one night or something. Like, I would actually start seeing success as far as getting dates, and because I was taking the game away. But so it was on Match, and that's when I met the confidence artist, unbeknownst to me. But I realized, like, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I can kick myself a lot. I mean, she was a total pro. I mean, the short of it is how we discovered it later. Likely because my family got into a big lawsuit over the sale of the car business. I mean, standard stuff, but I think it was on either the front page of maybe the Globe or the Boston Herald or something like that. And they think she saw that and likely targeted me in some way. So, because they found out later through an investigation, she had something like 5 or 6 Match accounts, some posing as men, to see what kind of messages would work. And then, so I met her, and I thought it was awesome. There was no, like, everyone's like, oh, you were the con artist. It must have been crazy. I'm like, no, I thought it was the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, but then, then that all came to light a little bit later.
How did it get broken out into the open? I mean, you met her in person.
Yeah, I met her in person. Everything was great. I got engaged inside of it was about 8 or 9 months, something like that. what happened was she made up an entire background about herself. And then she claimed that she had a lot of that her mother lived in, was it Australian Avenue in Palm Beach, which is like where Trump lives and Bill Gates. It's billionaire row, right? It's all billionaires pretty much. And so my aunt at the time lived there, and I brought her down for Thanksgiving, like, oh, it might be kind of a surprise. Like I have like, I have like 2 cousins in Palm Beach, and my aunt lives there, and and then so she's kind of like deer in the headlights.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom noticed that, so she claimed to be an accountant for PwC or CPA. And my mom noticed that for a girl who was an accountant, she was too calculated for these kind of small mistakes she would make that when she was dressing. Like she would wear a button-up shirt and one button would be missing. And her name was, she was pretty busty, this girl. But it would just be open enough, and either the bra would be too loose or too tight. So she noticed kind of like all of the men doing elevator looks, like as you would be like, did I just see something?
Yeah.
The back of her pencil skirt, like she wouldn't dress like a whore or something, but the back of her pencil skirt, the zipper would be kind of broken, so you could just kind of see a little bit of the G-string.
Right.
But it would look more like a mistake. My mom kept noticing that, and then she would wear a sweater that was somewhat sheer, but then the bra would be too tight. So it would be like, did I just? So my mom kind of noticed, like, did I just catch a bit of nipple there or not? So my mom thought that was too calculated. And then my aunt looked for, she claimed that her mom was this. Sold organic foods. And then at that time, my aunt was married to a guy who was a private chef for a lot of people, for a lot of celebrities. And he's like, oh, I get ingredients all over the place. Like, where is the store? I was like, I'd love to give her the business. Like, oh, well, it's on like the other side of Florida. I said, well, I go all over. Like, these guys want crazy stuff. And then so he went looking for it. And he's like, if I can't find it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I go everywhere. He couldn't find it, so my mom hired my mom hired a private investigator.
She didn't tell you?
She didn't tell me.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom's a whole different can of worms. That's probably why I really got super gamey. But anyways, she didn't tell me she hired this private investigator. Then it came out. My mom wasn't great at how she told me she came out, so I was like, fuck you, this can't be real. And then kind of sure enough, like, I was like, but maybe it is.
Yeah.
Because basically said, like, nothing here is real. She's just like a personal assistant for, some higher up over there. The guy was able to get into her office and look at things, but it was just kind of this very surface level thing. But I noticed the one good thing about game's like, if all of her behaviors change while she's dating you, likely she's cheating on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly I noticed that. So I was like, damn. So I went to, we're going, this was kind of the crazy thing that all came up later. She was taking me to the Dominican Republic for my 30th birthday party. Or for my 30th birthday, not party. And she left, and she was getting real guarded with her phone. She was coming home real late at night. I noticed she's like suddenly went from listening to rock music to like rap music, dressing completely differently. And I was like, what is up with this?
Mm-hmm.
It's just something off here. So I looked in I opened up. She had like a Nano. So like, or whatever. So this wasn't even an iPhone. Like I opened it real quick and I went to the Facebook and I saw that her, she had been like sexting or Facebook sexting some coworker.
Yeah.
So on the plane ride, I didn't know what to do. On the plane ride to the Dominican, I confronted her with it. And then she was like, I knew I shouldn't have left that phone open. I was like, what? Yeah, and then she was like going back through her tracks. I'm like, I'm not going to tell her about my mom. And then I was like, how is she paying for this? Because I'm like, we're staying at a massive mansion all to ourselves inside of this resort. Like, I'm like, how is she paying for this? And because I thought she was making like a ton of money. And I was like, and all of her gifts were always really lavish to me. Like, you know, she got me a pair of custom made cowboy boots. It had to be $5,000 or something like that. So then later it came out when I moved to Denver, that I started getting calls. Like, you owe us $30,000. You owe us $50,000. You owe us, you know, $5,000. And I was like, what? So then it turned out that she had used my identity and gotten into my bank accounts and started. She was smart to go off like these crazy cousins of PayPal, like these real fringe, like easy pay, you know, and like zero down interest on a trip. So then all of a sudden these calls started coming in, and then the investigator looked into a little bit more and said, yeah, she's a professional confidence artist. You know, because there's a couple of things that she's been doing here, and so she's a pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously at that point it was over, but did you have to pay for that, or
No, I got a whole bunch of cease and desist. So I mean, I paid my lawyer, but I had to do a whole bunch of cease and desists to get away from it. And also, he said, you know, everyone says just change your identity. He says it's not that easy. Mm-hmm. He says you just want to protect yourself, because she had completely compromised my, you know, my social security number, my bank numbers, everything like that. And she was pretty smart with it, how she did it. But all the cease and desists worked.
Mm-hmm. So I'm for guys, because I've talked about girl game. I mean, this girl sounds like she had nuclear level girl game. So yes. How did she manage to pull you in? What was her approach? What did she do?
You know, I think she wasn't always like super submissive trad or something like that, but her personality and her humor. So I think she was vulnerable on the humor side, or vulnerable on kind of a little bit on the emotional side, where she could have a fun time and kind of joke. But she also sort of had these elements of where she was vehemently kind of like standing by my side. Mm-hmm. And then also, I mean, like sexually, like she was like always, you know, but it was, and then, you know, looking back, I noticed was a little bit odd. It was like a constant, like 3 times a day, always at the exact same time. And then every time after, like, you know, once you're done, instead of like, you know, women want the pillow talk, she would like immediately go into the bathroom for 45 minutes.
Right.
I was like, what? I kind of noticed. I'm like, I have this beautiful blonde. But it was her. She started kind of like, first she did a lot of similarities. Oh, we share. I mean, I think she was born around when I was born. She said, oh, we're both Cancers. You know, some born in July. And, you know, she kind of said she was in the car business, and then she sort of said she was, you know, so kind of a few of the same sort of things. But I think she knew when to walk that line where it was like, I can't just say all of the same things all the time. So she was able to kind of find that tension. Mm-hmm. You know, she kind of had this sharp sense of humor. So she was able to kind of be sarcastic, but not, you know, some women try ball busting. It's just like, what do you do? Like, leave that to the guys.
Yeah.
So, but she was able to kind of pull me in with that. So she wasn't like doing this push-pull. She never got angry at me.
Yeah.
She never would like, and that was kind of almost a sign. There was emotional tension, but there was no sort of like the standard kind of conflict that might arise. And it's not that it's a huge disagreement. It just might be something small, and you need to kind of resolve it a little bit. But that never would sort of happen. She would always kind of, not overly on the nose do it, but somewhat agree with me or vehemently get on my side about it. And then sort of she was able to, you know, talk to him, like, oh, your father must have been an amazing man. You know, I see so much potential in you, that kind of thing. So that
opposite, she knew where your vulnerable spots were, the opposite of what your ex had said.
Right. So she was like, you know, it's just, this is amazing. Like, you know, your dad would be so proud of you. Like, and she knew my mom was overbearing. She tried to game my mom a little bit, but it didn't really work. Mm-hmm. And that's where it kind of started losing me, because she started dressing real preppy, like typical East Coast, like pop collars on the Ralph Lauren. She thought my mom would like that. And I was like, what happened to the miniskirts and the Daisy Dukes?
Yeah.
You know, what happened?
There's an incongruence.
Right. So, but she was able to show that admiration for me. You know, and even though I was kind of floating around, not doing anything and kind of living like the party boy lifestyle, she was like, you know, I really have so much faith in what you could do.
Right.
And I was like, oh, you know, so I was getting, she wasn't like blowing smoke up my ass, but it was very well said to be like, yes, she believes in me.
Yeah.
And she respects, she admires me. You know, she 100% believes in me.
It's that loyalty connection.
Right. And I thought that was the big thing that was kind of like, wow, you know, this is something else.
So in the aftermath of her, I mean, so from, I guess not so long after this, you got involved with Nick Sparks. Is that?
Yeah, that was pretty quick. Because I realized, like, after that, I went out to, it's funny, because after that, I started dating and I kind of got, like, I was seeing more success.
Mm-hmm.
But then the allure of pickup kind of got to me again.
Yeah.
You know, the allure of, like, you know, so I was like going out to downtown Denver and like, let me put on the necklaces again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, let me get the belt buckle. I had these crazy cowboy boots and like, let me get the stuff. I'm like, it's not working again.
You got paid $5,000 for them, so you know you might as well use them.
Right, exactly. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I ended up they're mine anyways. You know? So I was like, and I kind of noticed. I'm like, all right, you know, Denver's a much easier place to approach than Boston. You know, so but then I was like, this is not working again. So that's when I kind of found Nick Sparks. And then I kind of paid a little bit more attention to David Shade about finding a woman with values and good high self-esteem. So I was like, all right, the game stuff is just not cutting it. You know, the women I'm getting, it's just kind of like, you know, I had like a whole match profile thing. I was using the race to priest.
Yeah.
Match stuff. And then Nick was kind of, I remember how shocked Nick was when going out to the bars with the Lower East Side. He's like, go and talk to women, because I mean, it kind of dawned on me, and even dawned on me with Scott. Like, I guess a lot of clients, when they come into those events, they don't like go talk to women. It's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, you realize how much further ahead of the curve you were.
Right, and I don't know if you remember Nick Sanchez.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he kind of had the cancer as a kid, so his jaw was kind of messed up.
Yeah.
And he was with that, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "You don't have any problem approaching girls." Like, if I were a girl and you came up and said, "Just hi to me," I'd cream myself. What are you doing here? You know, then I'm at the thing and like, you know, I talk to a girl. Nick's is like, and 5 minutes later, I'm making out with some chick, and Nick's like, "What is this?" Like, I just went to the bathroom and you're already, you know, this one girl's like, "You're sucking face." I'm like, what's going on? But that's when I kind of started, you know, I was still sort of attracted to the game aspect, but I was moving myself more away from it a little bit. And then I got into a relationship with a girl when I got back. So that was about 5 or 6 years. I mean, she's like an Instagram yoga influencer now. So she was a little bit, at the time, she was more Jersey Italian. But like the game was, even then I wasn't aware of my values and how important that was, and how important it was to vet women or to qualify women. You know, that's like, I was not really aware of that. I was kind of depending on the game element thing, but then I was able enough to be like, okay, I can flirt and just be myself, you know, just don't be a pushover.
Right.
And, you know, and that was kind of the end of it. And then, you know, the David Shade stuff is, I mean, but right after Nick Sparks, that's when I started, a couple months later is when I started doing the marketing for the Dow Badass. And that's when a lot flipped upside down.
So I mean, I'm excited to get into this, because this is where, you know, I only see the very beginning of your story here before you kind of go off into the wilderness as you climb the mountain. But I think just some interesting points here for guys is that how pickup, especially in those early years, there was very, very minimal focus on qualification or vetting.
None.
Like, everything was about how you can make a woman attracted to you. And
Right.
I remember like Nick's stuff was so, even before the boot camp, he changed my results, because just even on a phone call, like I was doing so much entertaining stuff, and you know, I get women to a certain point, but then it's like I had to keep dancing, you know, and then they'd start to pull back because it was obvious that I was subcommunicating too much, you know, dependence on their response.
Right.
It really was just about once the switch flipped, that women, like, why were you trying to work so hard necessarily to make this girl interested in you? Well, why was that woman even valuable to you to begin with?
Right.
And to really start to look at them as, you know, is she just attractive? Is that the only reason I care? That the seeds of that's when everything completely changed. It's like dating women became a totally different ball game.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I remember there was a lot of products around that time of like, you know, girlfriend training program.
Yeah.
And it was like these weird methods to get them to not cheat.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't do anything of like, you know, there was kind of this anxiety-inducing aspect of, you know, if you mess this up, she's gonna, you know, go bang everybody else.
Yeah.
Or you're doing it because you know you're not, you know, you're terrible in bed or something like that, or you lost your manhood and now you need to go gain back. And it was just like this very weird, like, okay, maybe this person is not a very good person.
Yeah.
Maybe this person has emotional dark spots that really you shouldn't be. They're undateable right now, or probably maybe likely forever undateable. So instead of like, which is funny because I think like I started really like I was never aware, like I was kind of almost, I was not at all aware of my values for a while. Like it just flew over my head. You know, so I was like, well, I got to do this kind of game thing like this, and it works, and the dynamics. But then it was kind of like, well, I'm making wonky relationship choices. Like, what is this, right? Like they're pretty women, but yeah, okay. So it is funny that, yeah, because I think Nick, coming back to Nick was really good at, you know, making it way more natural with your strengths.
And it was rare back then. I remember the Social Man, Christian Hudson, and certainly Nick Sparks within that race of Pierce, the Priest, not so much. But there was, although I learned a lot of good stuff from him about texting. So, I mean, I'm not you know, but they were like, there was so much more of a focus. Like there was actually some level of integrity that you could feel in it. You know, same with Scott.
Especially from Nick, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, Jonathan, yeah, but I don't think Jonathan was a pro. I mean, Jonathan would get, I mean, I like Jonathan a lot, but he would get obsessed on a girl, and that was.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Jonathan started to care more about business.
Yeah.
Than that stuff. Nick was, I think, the sort of moral beacon with it that kind of helped keep the company from going too far towards like financial expediency.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that time period, it was really rare to find that, because as you said, everything that came out was some level of predation on guys' insecurities. And I think one of the craziest things, I mean, because you've mentioned multiple times here, you know, you're a handsome man, right? And how if there hadn't been insecurity, that would have been acknowledged more clearly, and that it would have been acknowledged as a relevant factor. But PUA marketing was so good at diving into guys' pain points. It basically, like, I remember it took me years to actually accept one of the most obvious fucking things in the world, which is that being an attractive man physically helps you with women.
Oh,
like,
I didn't realize it until 2020. I'm not even joking. Like, I mean, it's almost like embarrassing to admit that, but I'll admit it. I didn't realize, and it was really actually, you know, Sean Smith, who was kind of like the slap. I mean, that's when when he said it, I was like, Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you don't like, and that the funny thing is, you know, when I went, you know, being behind the marketing scenes of the seduction groups and seeing all these events and kind of studying it, you know, kind of being then on a different side of it. A lot of the guys that came to the events, you get like a multi-mega millionaire, or not, sorry, walk that back, not mega millionaire, but a guy who lives in Manhattan Beach on the Strand, who's an engineer who's like 32, and he's been just busting his ass for his entire life. And he's a good-looking guy, and he's like, well, I have a Ferrari. I'm like, wait, like, how's this guy not getting? But yeah, they're so insecure. Like, well, I mean, it attracts a lot of engineers because they want the, how can I do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah,
make it work. But it is funny how it does really, and then coming from the marketing side of it, I mean, it altered a little bit towards when I started leaving it. But yeah, that was a very thing you want to press on, is that, you know, a good-looking guy is going to beat out, or you could beat the good-looking guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that was a thing we used to hammer all the time.
So tell me about that. So you get more into the copywriting space. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the interview, I remember when you started to go through some of those copywriting classics, you know, Gary Halbert newsletter, doing all the stuff, writing it by hand. So kind of take us through that behind the scenes of the seduction community.
Oh man. So what happened was, I moved to Denver, and you know, I got that car job, and it was an auto broker place. And no way. And so I remember I bought the Tao of Badass. I probably saw the Goldfish video. You know, if anyone's watching this remembers that was like a beast back in the day. And I liked the book. I thought it was like a little bit different, because at that time it's like all the dating stuff is the same stuff. You either kind of get the mystery magic method, or you have like the Vince Kelvin method, or Spear, or all these weirdos.
Swing cat.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh God. So,
I tried looking for him like a few months ago. These people just disappear into the.
Oh, they vanish. Yeah, David Shan, I think, is still around. He has one of his people who kind of run the site. David's got to be up there, but David is a cool guy. So I saw an ad said, you know, Denver opportunity. I was like, oh yeah. And so I thought I was going to be like I can do a dating coach thing, like, you know. And I got there, and they said, can you write us a sales letter? Or it didn't say, it's like, can you sell us this course? So I was like, well, I was in the car business, and I was pretty good at the car business. I'm like, I'll just write out and sell them I'll just throw every clothes I know in the book at them. So I did this, and they're like, yeah, can you come in? So I walked in, and it was weird because they just got into Denver, and there wasn't a basement, right? So I mean, I'm used to the car business because I started selling cars when I was about 16 or 17. And I was fortunate that my dad threw me to the wolves. And even after he passed for a little bit, I was at a place for a little over a year that did 1,000 cars a month. And I was thrilled that I succeeded without knowing that I could do it on my own without, you know, my name sitting on the sign. So I got in there, I'm like, this is a basement? Like, what is this? You know, and it was, I don't know if you ever got Sonny Kazee. He was kind of around the social man stuff. Mm-hmm. He was there.
Sonny Kazee or something like that?
Yeah, Kazee. Yeah. Interesting guy. And then so I got in there, and Josh Pellissier, he was with Tao Badass. He's like, here, are you the guy who wrote the sales stuff? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right. He's like, can you write these emails? Because another guy named Brad Osborne was there, and he wanted me these personal assistants. And I remember the first day, he's like, yeah, can you go and get me some coffee? I'm like, no, I don't do that. And he was shocked. And like Josh was there, and he was like, but I hired you. I'm like, I'm not someone's coffee bitch. And I like Brad. He became, you know, I haven't heard from him in years, but you know, he and I became, you know, pretty good friends. But I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, man. And Josh is like, no, you're the guy who wrote that sales letter, right? I'm like, yeah. It's like, here, write emails. I'm like, I don't know how to load them on. He's like, don't worry. He's Brad will do it. So I'm writing emails, and Brad is loading them up, and they're going really, really good. And I have no idea what's going on. And he's like, oh, here, do you think you can improve this? And it was like an upsell. And I guess Jonathan Hudson had wrote it. I didn't beat it, but I got close to it. But I beat the downsell.
Yeah.
I had no clue that it was a downsell. I was like, all right, well, here, let's try this. And it worked. And then he's like, you're our new copywriter. I was like, what? He's like, you're our new copywriter. I'm like, I don't have a legal thing. Like, I don't know how to do that. He's like, no, like copywriting. I'm like, yeah, all the legal stuff. He's like, no. He's like, what you've been doing for like the last 2 weeks and what you did just for the, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, no, go home and read the Halbert letters and tell me if you want to do this. I was like, all right, I guess so. I went and I read it and it was like a lightning bolt. Because I remember like some of like my dad was kind of a little bit of a prepper. So I remember like those old ads of like, defeat any man with his gun. I was like, oh my God. So, and that was it. So I became Dow Badass's copywriter. I didn't write the goldfish letter. So any copywriter listening wondering, I didn't write that one. And that was it. I started writing their emails. It started going really, really good. And it was all in affiliate marketing. Which even at the time, it still didn't make any sense to me that you're just like, you get the customers and you just give them away. But, the money at that time, it was the wild, wild west. And the seduction market at that time, the male seduction market at that time was huge. That was 2011 to 2014-ish. So I started writing sales letters and started writing that. And then I, started meeting the seduction guys really fast. And I realized how it's like marketing companies pretty much. And then most of the guys, like no one like, oh no, it's like, oh, we should sell mystery method. Like, yeah, no one buys that shit. What? It's like, yeah, those guys are retards. No one buys that shit. Because the sales letters stunk. And a lot of them you find out are real catty.
Yeah.
With each other. Like they're just so much infighting all of the time. So like was it Savoy and Mystery or like.
Yeah, and that was just as an aside for guys. That was one of the big things with that I think underlined the approach. Like it was a very feminine approach to getting women. Extremely.
Like, I mean, I don't know how much I'm giving away, but like Mystery has an issue where he gets rejected really bad. I don't know if he still has this issue. I hope he fixed it. But he would basically lock himself in a room and cry and masturbate for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you find that out when you start working and you're like, oh, what?
It's like, do I really want to follow this guy?
I don't know about that. Or you meet some of the women they're with. Well, let me throw that back. Not a lot of them get women.
Yeah.
Mystery kind of could. Most of them, the majority of them. I mean, Gary Halbert joked about Ross Jeffries that you could put him in a Tijuana whorehouse and still couldn't get laid. That was a Halbert quip. And then I started noticing that right away, seeing them at events. But there was this huge dichotomy of all of a sudden the marketing started taking over. Mm-hmm. And it became very apparent very quickly, like who was actually real and who wasn't, how really fake it was. And then, the real like hardcore PUA guys were just always bitching at each other.
Yeah.
And they had weird...
It's got more lays,
Oh yeah, the forms.
You get the hottest girl on the set, all this.
Oh, this and that. Because I remember, even early on, like Mark Manson, he's kind of an interesting study because he was deep into that PUA stuff and he was actually good at it, but then he started speaking out against it.
Yeah.
Because when you find out like David Dita's real name is like Ralph or something, and is to kind of doing like the book has some neat stuff, but you're like, this guy does some weird shit, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like I'm gonna do like mentalist woo pickup. Like, what is that? You see that these guys who are just forum jockeys.
Yeah.
And so much like post hoc stuff. And then I noticed because we were hosting events, and then Josh went on this. He just went off the reservation. He's still off the reservation. So remember, he had a lawsuit with Jordan Harbinger, I think.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I think something like that. Was it Harbinger or maybe the other Art of Charm guys? I hope I'm not speaking out of place. So maybe he had something going on. I think with the Art of Charm guys.
Okay,
I think that was Jordan. I think. I can't recall, and I think I don't know if Jonathan had some. I probably shouldn't speak out of place. That's their business. Yeah, I just remember how like you would get a guest expert at an event, because we had our coaches, and then I would go and watch because I wanted to see. I was a real big believer. I'm like, okay, let me go see so I can write these sales hooks. Because at this time I was like, even though they were still running the Goldfish and I was trying to beat it. I mean, my first goal they had me on was to beat Jonathan's upsell. Mm-hmm. And I had a fortunate ability where I could afford to like get really good, I could pay to get. I was buying every single copy course there was, even though some of it was not a lot of, to be honest, was helping. Just sticking to Gary Halbert, David Ogilvy was like, okay, this works. Then I was like, okay, well, John Carlton works and David Garfinkel works, but no one else works. Mm-hmm. But so I'd go to all of the events. Like I'd fly all over, and like we'd have the guest expert. Like here we got Jason Capital coming in, or Race to Priest. Yeah. Or we'd get a couple odd PUA guys. Oh, I forgot to tell the story before I got into that. I forgot to tell the story about the PUA party I went to with Jonathan and Nick. Yeah, we'll tell that later. That was with the RSD guys.
Yeah, I think I've heard this one.
Yeah.
From
yeah, it was this AMOG man.
AMOG, yeah. Oh my God. No, tell it. I mean, well, whatever.
So a quick aside, I was at a party in New York City. It was in Midtown somewhere, and I just started dating the girl who's now the yoga influencer, showing the camel toe all over the net. And at this time, she was way more Jersey. She had this real badass edge to her. So we're at this party, and Nick invites me. It's a pretty big party. It's one of Jonathan's wealthy buddies' houses in Midtown, so it's this big penthouse place. But old New York, no air conditioning. I'll never forget that. It was like no air conditioning. It was like 100 degrees and humid. Everyone's like sweating. Remember that. So I had no idea. Like I kind of knew who Race DePriest was just from the sales letters. So Race was there, and I recognized Rob Judge from the sales letters. I was like, oh, cool. Like there's a couple of pickup guys here. Then on the corner, so I was like, this guy kept trying to hit on. Her name was Carrie. Kept trying to hit on Carrie, and then I walked over. And I saw he was okay. He just doesn't know. And I was like, "Hey, man, I'm nice to meet you." And I think it was it was Jeffy or whatever, the RSD Jeffy or whatever.
Jeffy.
I think yeah. And he's like trying to, like I didn't really capture it. He's like, "Oh man, nice tight shirt. What, are you showing off your muscles?" I'm like, yeah. If it was any wider, it'd be more see through. I was just kind of joking like that with him. Like, I wasn't trying to like A-bog. Yeah. I was just joking with him because he was kind of like throwing shots, and I'm like, is he throwing shots? I'm like, I don't really know. He's like, tight jeans, huh? And I'm like, yeah. I would just say stuff like that. And I was kind of like, what's wrong with this guy? And then he kept kind of going at that. And I was just kind of like, whatever, I'm just going to just kind of, said, what do you work out? He's like, is that all you do all day? I'm like, I work out a fair amount. I'm like, yeah. Well, it's like, what are you worried about your muscles? Like, why work out? So what's the deal? So we kind of kept doing this, and he was like, I could tell he started he was getting real nervous, and real tripped up. And he goes into the kitchen, and then he starts freaking out. So I'm out there talking to someone, and I could have been talking to Jonathan, one of Jonathan's friends, just kind of random. And Kara's like, this guy's been such a creep all night. I'm like, yeah. He's just like, he's trying these weird, like, let me read your palm type things, and like, no. So he's in the bathroom, and all of a sudden you hear just something being thrown, and everyone gets quiet. And he's like, "Who the fuck is that AMOG master out there? Guys, set me up for disaster!" Like he's crying, and like Rob Judge, I think it was Judge, like they run in there and they're like, "Dude, you gotta leave, man." So he left, and they're like, "Yeah, that's like an RSD guy. You thought you were some AMOG master." And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know if it was, I forget who got the guy to leave. It might have been Rob Judge or someone else, but it was just like, he freaked out in the kitchen, like throwing, like slamming doors. Then he came up to me and gave us real groveling apologies. It was a real beautiful girl. I'm sorry. I'm like, what is this? So anyway, so that's
and this is RSD for the guys. I mean, guys should know. Most of these guys should know RSD, but RSD up until a few years ago when they voluntarily disbanded, I guess just because of all the pressure that was put on pickup circles publicly. But because like Julian and everything from RS.
Yeah, their marketing too was dying. They tried a dying breed at the end.
Well, that'll be interesting to hear about, because there's always another reason behind the scenes as well. But I mean, these are the guys who built arguably the biggest pickup company in the world, and so this is like one of the top guys there, and you got like Jim here AMOGing him by just simply not doing anything, just responding like a normal person.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I was just being like self-deprecating, kind of normal conversation. I didn't even know it was being that self-deprecating. It's like, okay. Yeah. After a while, I was just like, yeah, man. Like, okay, like, right. They really took over like the forum type crowd.
Yeah.
And well, that was an eye-opening thing. But coming back to the marketing thing, is seeing like it's like Savoy and Mystery were always at each other's heads and lawsuits. But yeah, RSD, they really grew that forum type feel. But I remember going out, like, we'd bring the guest experts in, and they would never, everything was very ad hoc about the women. The more PUA they were, it was so like ad hoc. Like, oh, well, what you should have done was Kino escalate and then bust on the friend. And I was like, well, you don't know that. So that was a pretty fascinating thing to kind of start seeing that, and then seeing because those guys, they couldn't market their stuff, because on one end, I'll kind of give them credit. Some of them had more moral backbones. Mm-hmm. A good example of a guy who could actually do it, who had like the PUA moniker, was Brad P.
Yeah.
He could actually do it. Like, I saw him do it, and I was like, damn, this guy's legit. I mean, it helps. He was just a very charismatic guy, and he saw that the RSD guys, I mean, they would run a ton of boot camps, but they didn't have like, that's what kind of separated a lot of them, is these big marketing things became like Ben's magnet. Like, I point this magnet at girls and they slide onto my cock.
Yeah. From
Vin DiCarlo, the Pandora's Box method. The Richard Arena, the stealth seduction.
Yeah. Gambling.
Yeah. I mean, he is. It's funny because everyone's like, "Oh, he's good with chicks." Like, yeah, it helps when you're really good looking and you're wealthy and you have that accent.
I remember in one of his sales letters that he talked about, I think he was talking about himself, or maybe he was talking about like his inspiration, but it was, I wonder if the whole thing was fake, but some, mid-40s guy who was fat, living on his like mom's couch, who went out and was getting all these like 9s and 10s at the club. And yeah,
from what I understand, and I never met him. I mean, I worked with guys who were on his side, or talked to them. He did study the game a little bit, but he was real, and and he kind of got into like the stealth PUA, and I think he kind of was associated with, what was it, Kezia Noble? I remember.
Yeah.
Her every PUA guy wanted Kezia Noble.
Just like this big tit British girl who says banalities, but just look at it because it's like her tits are out in the video.
Oh, amazing advice.
Yeah.
She just loved attention.
It's honestly
the whole thing.
The Brits are really good at this in particular. I mean, I think Matthew Hussey does the same thing for women.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
I always looked at them as kind of like flipping the coin. Although I will say, Matthew, I think he probably, like, he's provided value. I don't know if I can say that about Kezia.
No, yeah, because I never met Kezia, but that's the thing. Like, Richard was smart enough very early on to kind of see that these people were full of shit.
Yeah.
That on one end, the weird PUAs tended to just kind of be, like, oh, I'm going to run the spear method.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, like, I remember there was things like, you hear stories like, yeah, the guys went to an event, for Spear for Day game, and they followed him around in a mall all day as he just bought shit. And then he's like, you guys didn't know about anybody or something, like these, they're, and then they had like these real weird, and then, then some of the marketing people kind of started separating off and kind of seeing the bullshit. Like you get, someone would, would somehow mistakenly, what was the name of that guy? I think he was out of Arizona. It wasn't the old white tiger guy. It was a young guy. But anyway, you get these text messages that all he sends to his girls or emails is like, I can make you squirt. And then it was almost like the new Twitter thing of like incel pickup. I was like, why aren't you responding back to me? I can give you the greatest time of your life. And you're seeing these things, like these experts are coming in, and you see that they don't have any of their lives together. And so the marketing guy, so Richard was real smart to see that he could make money in the marketing.
Yeah. And
he could sell these things. And he just went that direction. And then he was kind of very around those guys. Vin DiCarlo, his real name is Ryan Kowalski. They're real smart to kind of like, these guys don't know what they're doing marketing wise. We're going to go turn this into a crazy business. And same thing with like Josh Pelletier, the Dow Badass and that stuff. And that just sort of took it away. And then there was a couple of guys with integrity, like Brad P was one of them. He was like, I don't want to be around these dorks on forums. I really think I have value. So I want to do this marketing thing. But he's like, these marketing guys are just as scummy as the other guys. Like they're all selling like, the affiliate emails are getting crazier and crazier. And then kind of I remember when I was writing, it's like, I would just look at browsers to see what kind of emotional angles I could hit on guys. And I was like, all right, so stepdaughter is one. Or the guy just sitting there like eating the ignorant boyfriend who's being a jerk, and you show up at the Super Bowl party, and she gives you a wink to go back and have sex. I'm like, well, that could be a sales letter. So because porn really sets like a tone for these seduction guys, and Richard was real smart to get on that. Vin DiCarlo was real smart to get on that, and that pissed off guys like Brad P or David Shade. It's like, well, we're not into that.
Yeah.
So it was very fascinating seeing that, like that started kind of to divide a little bit, and RSD's like, we're going to hammer on the forums for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating seeing that.
So when you were at Tao of Badass, this kind of kept accelerating. Right.
Well, it started getting crazier and crazier because the crazy thing was I started getting, we started getting a lot of, we were kind of early on to adult traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Us and, the Goldfish video and Ben's Magnet and Richard and Stealth. Those were kind of, but problems with porn traffic, it's very junky traffic.
Yeah.
So they're like, can you think you can write a VSL to beat this? And actually I worked on it actually with John Benson.
John
Benson.
From Benson, okay.
Yeah, and then I tweaked it a lot because he didn't really want to be kind of associated with it. And this thing was a dirty video sales letter, and we put it on a site and it did great. So suddenly I got a reputation that I could convert on adult traffic. And learning about adult traffic is a whole different. Learning about adult traffic, like when you see the notarized form that Kim Kardashian's mom signed off before they shot the porno, like, yeah honey, you're going to shoot here. And the lawyer, you're just like,
was not spontaneous.
Yeah. So, and then, you see that these guys, so the marketing started getting one up. So then the PUA guys were there was kind of smart outsider guys who started doing fake, they would film themselves doing the pickup videos.
Sure.
It was all fake.
Yeah.
Because one, you really can't get someone's waiver. Like no one wants to be like, oh yeah, I'll sign off on that, and you can put me all over Pornhub.com that this guy picked me up. So you'd always hide the girls. So that started becoming more and more a thing. Then it kind of became more and more instant sex marketing. The PUAs, they kind of just wallowed in their bitch fights.
Yeah.
And then with the advent with like online, with like social media kind of becoming bigger, things like Tinder becoming bigger, the PUA stuff kind of guys just weren't cutting it.
Because now it's easier. A lot of them pivoted. The dating market started to pivot more towards online related stuff.
Right. And well, there's a lot more money in it. And it was really funny how the money worked on those things. Like the porn traffic, like you think it was gonna be like little Igors with hunchbacks or something. It really wasn't. It was like just creepy old, like 45 to 65-year-old men would buy the course and wouldn't do a thing. And they were in wealthy areas that just kind of wanted safety, that they could pick up maybe go to the AVN thing and pick up a porn star or something. I don't know what they were thinking. But then you kind of oddly get the engineers out of it. Those are the guys who would pay. Like this, at least for us, I'm not sure for like the other markets, but Philadelphia and Los Angeles were two huge markets for us. Dow badass. But we're just making up. We're just making it up. All of the video sales owners were completely just making it up.
Yeah.
You know, like the fucking woman video that I wrote. We use Nick because Nick has a kind of you're not going to mistake him for Hugh Grant. But Nick's, I don't know if Nick's listening. I love Nick. He's a great guy. He and I are still talk often. But we had him on video on purpose, and then I set up the scene of, we hired the models, we hired this, and we put them on video, and we kind of had that night lighty thing. We made it look ghetto. We had to make it like, first we had a camera guy. I'm like, no, that looks too slick. It's got to look like it was taped on some old Helio phone or something. If anyone remembers a Helio phone, should get a prize. Like, you got to make it look. So all of that stuff was so. We would just fake it, and then we noticed like all the fake pickup videos started coming around, because in the content people wanted that sort of proof because it was getting so outrageous. Like Vinda Kowalski had like this, this one on porn where where it looked like a girl talking just like you and I on Skype, kind of pixelated, like, I don't want to say it, but I met this guy, and I met him a couple months ago, and he was a real nice guy, but I just wasn't very attracted to him, and he's real kind of needy. And I was dating this rich guy, and well, the nice guy just said something to me, and I feel bad because I cheated on the guy. And my boyfriend's real rich, and this guy and it was the greatest night of my life. And he just said these 3 questions, like, am I a bad girl? And it's like, play the link below. It's like, it was completely all made up, right? And that started really saturating things. You saw the OG guys, they were getting, they were getting buzzed out, or they were buying into these dying breed business models. Like they were kind of like, well, I better get off the forum, and then maybe I better do this. And by the time they were getting on that, they were so in over their heads with, it was Richard Lorena at that time must have had like 5 or 6 guys. The really good copywriters were asked to can we beat this? I remember like the Ben's magnet thing had so many variations, and so many people laid claim to it. Ryan Kowalski wrote most of it, but other people would take a stab, and Ryan would be willing to put it in there. There was something like 586 variations of that ran. I remember I think Josh had me even try something. I don't know if it ever got there or not, because there's so many different versions of it. But it was just crazy how that went. And then it, kind of started changing, it was funny when it started kind of to die, when it started to die out.
And so would you say that started to die out around like 2014, 2015? Is that when it
yeah. Oddly enough, right around when Trump started his presidential election.
Yeah.
And a little bit before that, there were inklings. Personalities like Mike Cernovich, personalities like Mark Manson, even personalities like Robert Glover.
Yep.
And these guys weren't really trying to sell data. Mark had a unique angle because he was kind of one of the first ones who were like, this is bullshit. Right. And I remember it's funny, everyone in the seduction market, like, and when I first got, it's like, oh, he's an idiot. He's never going to make any money. Like, what happened to you guys versus Mark now?
Yeah.
Then, personalities, so like Cernovich, and then who was he with? What was that guy's name? Was it Victor Pride or something like that?
Pride, looking loser.
Right. And then a little bit of Roosh.
Yeah.
And Royce, but those guys were still pretty fringe. And usually, oddly enough, the guys who are like, I remember there's tons of emails like, oh, this stuff doesn't work. All women are idiots, just like Roosh says. Like, I remember that being a constant email.
Well, there was something that was building. So while I think PUA became more and more marketing focused and was almost losing its grounding in this attempt to capture market, there was this.
Right.
That's when I think the red pills and this other kind of, you started to have danger in play, people commenting on blogs. It started to pull in guys who maybe weren't looking to, they maybe felt like some level of scam coming on with that.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it, like, some of the PUAs, like, I remember there was one guy who got in a lot of trouble. It wasn't the one who got the RSD guy, but there was one who got busted in
Terreo.
Is that one? He would sneak into cabs and try to finger girls.
Okay, no, that wasn't Tom Terreo. No.
Yeah. That kind of made some headlines. And then I think when the guys would show up there, it was kind of there was kind of this element of, okay, at an event you have a couple of engineers who are capable, who are successful professionally. You have one or two odd guys, but they're able to pick up, the pickup artist can't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's really just talk to a whole bunch of girls. So it's not like the sales page, or then there's one or two guys who are real trying, like, they just get really into like automatons. Like, oh, if I only did it was just like this weird automaton stuff. But you could tell that it wasn't working. Yeah. So much. The marketing was getting more and more and more aggressive, but more and more alike.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of, I think these guys, the whole market in a sense was kind of starved. Or not starved, but they starved for something that was real. And it was funny when Donald Trump started kind of his rise.
Yeah.
I mean, people will say it's crazy, like, oh, Obama was making feminism. I'm like, no. Well, let me tell you, being a seduction marketer during the Obama years was a great time, right? Whatever it was about the energy that came out with Donald Trump, and then and you have on one side kind of a Cernovich figure, on the other side you have some of like a Mark Manson figure. Whatever it was about these guys, it just started killing the model. And what happened was, like I was mentioning earlier about RSD, they were kind of on the forum stuff, but then they tried to get onto this crazy marketing thing towards the end, and it was already dying. At that point, the smart guys were suddenly going into the women's market.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing is, if some of these guys were around in the market enough, they saw that these guys were real basket cases later on. I feel bad. Well, sorry, I'll name it. Like Race the Priest is a drunk. I hope he's gotten better, right? Yeah. But when I met the guy, he just couldn't, so he's coming out to an event, he's drunk and crying, or he's drunk on a stairwell, and you can't pull him in. Then be like run down like Jason Capital, like, hey, you got to talk longer. Why? Well, he's drunk and puking on himself and crying in the stairwell. So you saw that these guys were messes. Yeah. Their personal lives were not together. And then so certain OG marketers kept trying to do this affiliate thing, and then they just started fading out. Right? They couldn't get the people anymore because you realize the one line you got when you got on Tinder, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't have the looks. You weren't getting better. Because someone like Mike Cernovich or something like, hey, get in the gym, don't be a fat ass. Or, Mark Manson was kind of like, you got to think philosophically. When he wasn't even really talking about dating, but it was kind of pulling out towards like, I don't need to be doing this game stuff.
Yeah.
Or this Don Trump, he was just kind of like that whole, forget it, don't listen to these experts or elites. Fuck these people.
Well, I think, you mentioned during the Obama years how it was like the golden age of the market. And like bouncing off of what we said earlier, a lot of the PUA stuff was really like a feminine way of trying to get women. And that was kind of the way that men felt like they could get women. They had to do that.
Yeah, extremely. Women are always on a pedestal, and you had to figure out some way to manipulate it. Yeah.
Exactly. And there was, and so when it was splitting between the really scammy stuff. And then I guess you could also say it was scamming in its own way that was almost getting too soft. Like, so maybe it was going more authentic, but it was getting kind of be like limp dick stuff, like no boundaries and whatnot. And I think that guys, I mean, this is around the time when I decided to get into coaching, like it's 2014, 15 is when I was like, maybe I have a different voice in this whole thing, because I always was very, very interested, kind of like you jumping around. I listened to what everybody had to say. I mean, I went with the hardcore PUA stuff, did all the cold approaches, and then was out in like SoCal and spirituality circles doing like intimacy relating stuff. You know, I would explore it all, and then of course the red pill. But I think what Trump did is he was just so unabashedly masculine.
Yeah, especially during his rise, for sure.
And men were just starved for it. They were starved to see a man who would just go up and not be guilt tripped and would just say, fuck off. This is the truth. These are my boundaries, whatever. I mean, you don't have to get into the whole political thing. It was the energy he was bringing to it.
It definitely. I mean, some people will ask me in the marketing in space, because I remember towards the end of it, like, you know, because I went after that time, I went into health and fitness, which I thought was going to be less scammy, but it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, when you realize a guy like Brad P really believes in his stuff and was good and is so heartbroken that they leave, you're like, Jesus, these fitness guys are a whole different ballgame. But people ask me masterminds, you know, they're like, oh, the Obama years. I'm like, no, Donald Trump ended the seduction market.
Yeah.
Completely obliterated those guys. Because now the women, you know, I sometimes still go back and look at ClickBank. The women's market is still eking out. And that's what 6-7 years, and still eking out on, you know, as far as the dating offers, you know, that's still the ones where they're in the top 3 ClickBank pages. The men's stuff is just, I feel sorry. And some of those guys, they're like, I'm going to stake my career on this. They're still in there. I'm like, God damn, you got to be eking like pennies at this point. It's even if they have good content, they're still doing it. It's like, oh man, get off of there. But and the thing is, they're late. Like, you know, yeah, that whole energy. I think these guys were. The thing with a lot of these dating guys, you know, people think they're, oh, it's just getting misogynists who don't want, you know, who want to be mean to women or manipulate. No, these guys wanted girlfriends. They also wanted to better themselves, and they could put 2 and 2 together. That certain figures, like, you know, Donald Trump speaks about reading, you know, he speaks about his own self-development in a way, you know, and he has this unabashed energy. You know, where someone who's more like Mark Manson, you know, he's kind of telling you, you know, to kind of, he's a little more introspective, but he's going to push you into directions of trying out different things to be a little bit of a deeper thinker. Or Cernovich was kind of like a workout, you know, it was kind of a little more blunt. So these kind of different figures were offering accessory aspects to just getting women. Like, don't make women your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these guys were smart enough to kind of see that. Now it's when, yeah, you see the red pill stuff where they identify their entire lives through the lens of what a woman is doing, or a woman's status, or hypergamy, or whatever, all of these things. You know, directionally right, but yeah, the dating stuff, and by the time like RSD tried the crazy marketing, like, no, it's done. Man, like, you know, even porn traffic's like, yeah, we're not gonna make any money with that. You guys can go wherever.
And that stuff was also too much on the nose. I mean, one of the other things that Donald Trump did was it also created, let's say, a hyper immune response to male development, whereas before the sort of system, so to speak, did not necessarily frown too much on pickup stuff because it was kind of contained,
right,
this little community. But now it was like, once Trump came in, it was like, wait a minute, this you know, men getting what they want from women, like this, now we need to put the, you know, the kibosh on it completely.
Right. The whole line, remember there used to be lines like, she won't even know that's happening.
Yeah.
Like, this barely ethical move, don't worry, she'll never know. That was a huge line to say.
Yeah.
You had to throw that in there.
And you could get away with it, but as the zeitgeist changed, those guys were easy targets to go after. And also, you know, per your point, on their personal lives, most of them are already not super stable. So the pressure of all this stuff was not, you know, they couldn't transition into being really like, I'm a man. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
they had a hard time with it. I mean, like, David Shade is still around. You know, I think he's doing okay. Like, he was smart enough because he got into that world. And then he's like, no, this is cheapening my stuff.
yeah.
And I don't believe in 99% of the stuff that's being marketed. Because David would remember there's times like, hey, is this guy real? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, because so he pulled himself out of it and took his own product back and got rid of his marketing team, but he's still around. But the thing is, he had actual valuable, I mean, that's such a buzzword, valuable content, but he has stuff that works.
He knew stuff that, like, he was the real deal. I mean,
right. And he was about, you also got to get better in your life. You got to raise your values and want a high standard man, and he was great with that.
I think it's been really interesting how, so you had the pickup space moving towards this, still really focused on trying to get female reaction, to get laid, and more extreme stuff. And then you had the red pill underneath of it separating, which was like, this is female nature. And it became very much reactionary. So like more angry, whereas pickup was kind of still trying to work within the system.
Yeah.
The red pill was very, I mean, there was obviously elements of it that were, here's how you can get what you want from women, but there was a very negative undertone. I mean, people like Rollo still out there, that sort of whole world, it brought a really negative energy to it. And I noticed that once Cernovich, they kind of rode in the background of Trump, and maybe to a lesser extent Mike, who also tied himself very strongly to Trump in that whole transition. Once the election, 2016 election, was over, and Cernovich, for instance, moved into politics, because it started to become this thing where you realize how much of male-female dynamics are reflective of politics. And so all of the stuff, so Mike moves out of the space, and then there was this big vacuum. And what I noticed, especially in the Twitter world, was that it was super, super, like, everything. I felt like there had been all this development that was going on in the zeitgeist of, like, improving yourself as a man to get women. And I feel like we dropped down to this base level where it was all just really negative stuff about women and feminism, which was, it's important maybe to understand it, but people were in a bitterness trap. And I mean, I'll give myself credit, 2017, 2018, and Twitter, at least, that was when I really started to get more of a voice, because I was kind of making a differentiation, like taking some of the good points. And so now I think we're really at a good point, though. The manosphere, bringing this stuff full circle. I'm just gonna get my cat out of here.
No, it's all right. I have a cat you might have noticed, and he loves anytime I'm on video.
I had no idea mine was just sleeping behind the corner.
He's like, I have to be. His name's Hal. I named it after Gary Halbert. He loves video. And then, I don't have my dog here right now, but sometimes she's like, has to be staring. But anyway,
I've seen, like, I think it's a really positive development, which is that the manosphere is now huge. So you still have PUAs in one corner. Most of that stuff that you see is maybe day game, which is, I think, cleaner for the most part than a lot of these other ones. But you got all sorts of characters. But it's a huge range now, and there's the big movement for patriarchs, family, and I think it's cool in the sense that it's now, like, where the energy continues to expand is, I think we're moving away from the man versus woman dichotomy bit by bit. And I think it's becoming more and more about men discovering who they are as men, and then the corollary, women discovering who they are as women. And this sort of fight that's been going on, the guerrilla warfare of 20 years ago of men against women that led to, like, pitched battles, is now, I feel really good about the direction of things. But what's interesting is that, what you were saying with people like Brad P., David Shade, it's been very difficult to, like, I almost had like a bad taste in my mouth for marketing, because I've seen so much of the scammy stuff out there, and I'm like, do you, like, okay, to an extent, yeah, you want to touch people's pain points because you need to pace them to, find the answer, but some of this stuff was just, I don't know, it's been really difficult to find like a way to market in a scalable way, in a clean way, because you lose out, you leave money on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there, but yeah, geez, I mean, we did some scammy stuff for the dating stuff, and I wrote a dating offer before I went to the health thing. When I used a name, it was like Justice Donnelly. It'd be like what my porn name would be.
Justice Donnelly.
Yeah, and they were like, steal her heart. And it was the scammiest thing. Like, I wrote that my dad was this master seducer, and he died. And on his deathbed, he gave me this journal. And how because it's funny, in that market, they did not, polyamory was like, if you wrote a polyamory sales letter, you would just get nothing but hate mail back and no buyers.
Yeah.
Or even an email like, she would get so upset. But the idea that you can have multiple women and not lose her, but it's not polyamory, that was, right. Oh, if you wanted to do that, mm-hmm. You had to sell it as a safety net.
Right.
But in some of the scammy stuff, we would just make it up. I mean, the scammy, and it was funny because once I figured out that porn, especially like Brazzers, once I figured out that how they marketed it, I would just hammer those angles. It was made up, because I realized, like, okay, we have one dating guy who's like, he's having an existential crisis. The other ones hasn't been laid ever. So like, I just need to make this shit up for this, or we'd hire someone from Fiverr, like, here, just write bullet points, or someone else in the office would write bullet points. Actually, Nick Sanchez was the only one who could actually do it, and he was a huge help before he left. But it was like this, man. It was just, and then it was, how could we one up each other on the marketing thing?
It's amazing to really see how the sausage was made. Like,
it was seeing how much of a mess these pickup artists were, how much of a mess seduction experts were, and then like. Like, oh, well, they can't do anything. So then the marketing guys are all making it.
Yeah. And so you jumped out of that off that sinking ship, and then you jumped into fitness, hoping maybe it would be a little bit cleaner. Because I guess by this point, you was starting to feel really dirty.
I was. I mean, I had a reputation of being the adult guy, mm-hmm. Who could write adult traffic. And it was like, oh my God, the Russian media buyers. We have bigger bill. It's just some powder, but can you sell it? I'm like, oh, it's like $200,000. It was just like, they had so much money. I'm like, I'm not doing this. And then, like, Vin DeCarlo started getting into, like, what was it, the Peruvian boner brew?
Yeah.
I think John Benson wrote that. That's when it got really more into porn. Then RSD was like, because at that point it was like, can you just make your dick huge and hard? And somehow magically women are like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's all they wanted.
Yeah, Peruvian boner brew. Like, it was like, I don't know what I think it was like beet powder, like real cheap beet powder.
yeah, like some like basic L-arginine, right?
Right. So I had that cost money to get that biofeedback rush. I'll talk about that in the fitness stuff, because I thought the fitness stuff was going to be cleaner. Because the thing was like, I had this reputation of being the adult traffic guy, and I was like, I can't do this. I remember I even talked to a guy who wrote headlines for porn. He's like, it gets dark fast, and I'm like, I don't know how you fucking do it. And the one good end of it just totally makes porn look like it's amazing. Like, once you understand that they're on set for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I respect that kind of physical element. Like, wow, that is tough. And, the guys are on drugs. So if people want the secret, they don't they didn't take Peruvian boner brew or drink bee pollen to be hard for 8 hours. They're on some weird Chinese thing. If they take too much, they hallucinate.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's other guys out there, and like Sterling Cooper's on Twitter. I don't know. how much. This is from my understanding, and then I also heard this from a top porn star who I almost went into business with, but didn't. Thank God. I mean, I'll say, I mean, she's a very nice person. I have nothing but respect for her, but I just couldn't. It's nothing against her. It just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, just couldn't go further down the belly of the beast, basically.
In that, and also to, you know, I didn't want to be in the market anymore. I was like, I don't know, my values and stuff. You know, I really love. She's a good person. She's smart. Just there was a couple of factors. It wasn't just because she was in porn, but there was a couple of factors. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I just can't. And I was at that point where I was still unable to kind of look in the mirror a little bit. So what happened was, going back, I had this reputation, and I was actually working with David Garfinkel, who's, you know, he mentored me and he helped me a lot. And I was getting real close to these guys. I was whatever it was, like John Carlton doesn't like a lot of people, but he really liked me. And he helped me out a lot. So, you know, anytime I was at an event, he's like, you know, come here, and kind of, he called it kind of road dog. Yeah. So like, you know, like, but he was, you know, but word was on the street that I was available because Ty Lopez bought Tao Badass. And I talked to Ty. I was like, I'm not working with this asshole.
Yeah.
And he's like, I work for General Electric. So I actually went up and called every single person on the list. And they're like, he's name dropping everybody. So I'm like, all right, you know, I can call someone high up at GE, and I can use an old car connection to find someone who can actually make it happen. And they're like, yeah, he never worked here.
Yeah.
I called this other guy, like, yeah, but I don't know who that is. Like,
I mean, can you tell me that? So I know maybe that was 2015, 2016. I can't remember exactly when here in my garage got my new laptop.
Right before that. So, or yeah, go on, Sarah.
I was gonna say, I mean, obviously, like the Lambo and everything was leased, or, you know, for like a day or something like that. You know, it was for the video. Yeah. But was there a level of self-awareness with it? Like, was it done just to be very crassly hit all the points, or was it almost meant to be ironic, or was that just like a positive side effect that it was so like on the nose that
Ty is somewhat of a shark.
Yeah.
Or a predator, as I call it, because I quickly learned who was real and who wasn't in this world. Like Frank Kern knows when he needs to be Frank Kern, and he knows when he needs to turn it off. Mm-hmm. Ty kind of, because Ty doesn't have the swagger that Frank Kern does. But Ty made his money in sugar daddy sites. Mm-hmm. It made a good. He struck the iron at a very early time in sugar daddy sites. So his sugar daddy sites are like real skeezy, way out there. So he saw that the dating market was like, he thought it was really crazy and wild, and he thought he could get into it. But at this time, he was still kind of like, in this world, all of these internet marketers still love, like, oh, he knows business, because you throw a word, or you go out there and be like, well, your runway rate's a little low. You're like, oh, what does that mean? I got to pay this guy. Like, what runway rate? He doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about. He's cool. And I kind of started seeing that in the car business. I'm like, what is he even talking about? So Ty bought it. He thought he was going to make a ton of money with it. It had failed right away. So, I mean, Dow Badass was like a horrible business practice. You know, they're buying up everything. I mean, it was just like a one-hit wonder band that was completely dysfunctional. And dysfunctional because it had no business model whatsoever. It was just kind of like, spend more, make more. Yeah. Well, the ad's dying. Well, that's your fault. Spend more, make more. It's like, you spent $5 million last month in ads. You only made $2 million. That $3 million is on you guys. Like, yeah. And you don't have that money. So he bought it. It went way worse. And then they tried switching into this sort of income coaching thing that didn't go well. And then Tim Houston sort of wrestled it back from Ty, because for like pennies. So Ty blew his wad on that thing. It didn't go anywhere. And Ty talked this huge game. But when I met him and talked to him a few times and hung out with him, he really tried to get me to work for him. I'm like, and I just called all the people he name dropped, and not one soul knows him. you know, and I really looked into him, and I won't say his name, but he is a big time copywriter still and runs a big time agency. He was in the dating thing. That's a big enough hint. But he was like, don't work with Ty, man. You're better than that. Yeah. You know, or not better than that, but it's like, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still friends with that person. So I was like, my name was out on the street, and I came real close to working with that person. I was kind of shocked I didn't. I felt bad, like I almost burned him, because he was the one, but he was candid about the Ty thing. He wasn't like, hey, don't work with him, work with me. It was a very candid thing. But then Brad Howard in the midnight hour came out, because I'm like, I don't want to move to New York, because I told him, so I would work with you, but I'm only going to be, you know, I'm not going to upend my life. I said, I want to be next, you know, because his office was out on the West Coast and he's out in New York. I'm like, I'll be next to you, not next to them. He's like, well, you got to move out here. I don't know. And then Brad Howard came out. So that was like Venus Factor, Udonis Factor, AGR, Health, and then as it was got into health thing. And I thought I was going to be cleaner. And as far as the advertising, like there wasn't like, take this boner brew.
Right.
You know, and or this rare African herb gives you a 10-inch cock. Like, it wasn't that weird shit. But when I got there, the real beast behind that is a guy named Kyle Leon, not Brad Howard. It's a name, and Kyle is very kind of behind the scenes, but he's Kyle's a beast. And they were very nervous that I can only write adult, because that's another thing with copywriters. A lot of them get stuck in one niche they can't transfer over. So it was kind of like I got there and they're like, well, you're not writing copy right now. We'll have you load some emails. And looking back, they're kind of smart, because I was like really aggressive, but they were worried I was just kind of like Dick Bigger angles. But then I kept submitting offers, and then inside of a month, he's like, these are really good. You know, why don't you, let's start rolling you out. Because I believed in him. I knew as soon as I saw the numbers and the models, well, these guys make a ton of fucking money. Yeah. And then everyone was like at events, like, damn, you're working with them. Like, what are they like? What are they like? You know, and that kind of pulled me in further behind the scenes with it. You know, and then supplements and fitness and weight loss. But wow, there's so much. And then the funny thing is seeing some of the dating guys like slither out of dating into income expert.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. I mean, they make money selling junk in the dating space, but then they've made money, so then they'd sell in the income space, and they'd say, this is how I made all this money, and it becomes this kind of jump from grift to grift to grift.
Well, a unique red flag. So, and I think I put on one of my posts. A unique flag is if you see a guy who's like, Jason Capital, his real name's Alex Morocco. He probably doesn't like me now. I mean, Alex used to like me, but like, I don't think he was a bad kid at the start. Yeah. But Alex came from a fair amount of money, and there's nothing wrong with it, because he's still trying to hustle. He probably doesn't do as good as he says he does, but he's still trying to hustle. So I respect that he's out there trying to hustle. But yeah, he had like, I mean, his copywriter is actually pretty good. He's on Twitter. I think his name's Matt O'Connor. But he had like a decent offer, but not a great offer. But these guys, so if you see them coming to income from somewhere else, usually they will like Craig Ballantyne's kind of an example. They'll have one offer that sort of kisses the heights, and they're like, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be like the Venus Factor guys. I'm going to be like Russell Brunson. And then they think it's never going to end. And then the next offer doesn't do as well. And it doesn't, then it gets worse. Then it gets worse. And then they can't make any money in it. Then they're like, I'm going to teach people how to get rich.
Right.
And then as soon as you see that, like, so they had a decent offer before, almost all those guys, but then they get rich, and then you see them reinvent themselves there.
And is it because, I mean, I just, not to single out Jason or anything, but there's a certain level of them as individuals developing the craft, whatever they do know that they're offering there, that one offer maybe represents it, but then they don't continue to grow themselves. So it's not like there's a new insight that they can pull out that justifies a new product. Instead, they just kind of slice and dice what they already have
Right, and it's almost a matter of, this will sound, I mean, it's a matter of intelligence. I mean, you hear writing coaches say, don't write, there's no two-dimensional people. And I've talked to a couple of writing coaches. I'm like, there's no two-dimensional people. It's like, go to an internet marketing event. You'll meet all the two-dimensional cardboard people you need to meet. The thing is that these guys, they don't have the breadth of knowledge to extrapolate their knowledge, to develop their knowledge, to kind of stay in that, they're going to plant their flag and here's what they're going to do, nor do they have the balls to be like Alex Cortez, right? Like I think, like I study, like he fascinates me on Twitter because he has his health thing, but like, God, he's like, these absurd takes are really funny, but he's not like, suddenly one weekend he's the income guy, and the next weekend he's selling how to be closer to God or something, and then the next weekend trying to get, like, he's not going all over the map, because there's this depth of intelligence, and they're willing to, there's smarts there, and they can learn how to sell it. I mean, it's like you're coaching now. You're not like, well, now it's Pat Stedman, how to be a billionaire in crypto.
Yeah, exactly.
And the next second is like, forget crypto, how to make a ton of NFTs.
Yeah.
And then now it's how to be a wake up warrior. Like you're not like scrambling around. So a lot of those guys, like I haven't seen Jason speak on stage in a while, but he was a pretty decent stage speaker. But it's like, now it's income, now it's this, then it's that, then it's this. Like a great example of that is kind of Garrett White. First it's wake up warrior, you go play pretend Navy SEAL on the beach for a weekend. Now it's like income secrets. Now it's selling everything under the sun. Now it's wake up warrior greens. Now it's like this, but a lot of these guys will follow, right? They'll see Jocko selling greens, and well, I better sell greens. Or they'll see Mark Manson swore in his book, well, I better start swearing. They just follow and scramble, where they don't have that. You don't see that someone who is able to either expand on their knowledge or get deeper in their knowledge or have some sense of nuance to take their personality somewhere else, but not quite look like a scam or something.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Alexander Cortez is just completely authentic.
Right, exactly.
And so you see his own journey changes, and he'll even, like with his programs, he'll even talk about how this thing that I said before was wrong,
right.
or at least this is what I now believe based on what I've learned. And it's so it creates trust, as it should, not in like a scammy way. And I think that's where you really want to go with this, is that your business model is based on you, but you have to continue to grow. And
right. And it's scary in a sense, because you have to move beyond the templates that all these guys are telling you what to do. And a lot of these guys are telling you what to do are, they're telling you what to do because they know they're going to make money off of you. And that isn't even at a low level. Like Ryan Dice, I was kind of fortunate enough. So Ryan Dice is like, for the guys out there don't know, he runs like this, digital marketing thing, and he has traffic and conversion, and marketers hail him. And one of the saddest things I ever saw was some guy gave him a painting of him. I'm like, you gotta have nothing going on in your life if you're painting. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I remember even like the when I was with Kyle, and Kyle's like, yeah, Ryan Dice is a skeezy little fuck, huh? Now, of course, people are like, Kyle must be a poor broke loser. Like, no, Kyle is not a poor broke loser. Like Venus Factor did like almost close to 100 million or something. So no. It's just the nature of the beast of these guys. But Ryan is smart because he knows everyone in his event. They're all sitting there like this. He's going to get those people to sit there who are like, oh, I'm going to hand over my agency to you. But he has largely realized that most of them are affiliate marketers, and he is in their market with various names. He doesn't get a lot of number one offers, but he does get top offers. So he tells them all the tactics to run, right? Then he gets to test them against them to see what's working and what isn't. Then they come back and pay him for it's like he's running this kind of unique, this very nuanced thing, and people can't see, like, oh no, he's testing everything. Like, yeah, he told you what to test. He's watching you test it, and then he's competing against you. Right? Because he knows he's smart enough. Like, I'm not going to compete with Mike Gary.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to compete with Kyle Leon. I'm not going to compete with against these guys because they're going to do their own thing. But I'm going to compete against these people who are going to do what I'm going to say and try against them.
Right.
It's very smart. People are like, is that a scam? It's like
scamming the scam.
You know, it's smart. I think Ryan's a very skeezy little dude. You know, when you meet him in person, you're like, God, I need a shower. This guy's a skeezy little fuck. You know, I mean, Perry went to prison. And everyone's like, well, it's because he was making money. It's like, well, sorry, you know, someone who just maybe made $900,000 in income, like, even though the IRS is overreaching, they're not like after you. Like, they want to go after Bezos. Like, not like once I got rich, they were after me. Like, once you got rich at $900,000, they're not on someone's radar.
Right, and it would still, I mean, if the IRS goes after you, and
that sucks.
You know, I mean, it obviously sucks, and you know, maybe it's gonna suck for a lot of people.
It sucks no matter how much money you make. It fucking sucks.
Yeah, but to go to prison over something with the IRS, I mean, it's usually when the IRS goes after you, maybe they don't agree with some expense items. Okay, well, you got to pay some money.
He got it for the fraud. So he got it. He was calling himself a doctor.
Right.
Yeah. So when the FTC comes ringing, it's not because the current administration is a bunch of haters.
Yeah.
That all the time, like, oh, Donald Trump doesn't want me to make money. Yeah, I'm sure Donald is up at night thinking about your turmeric ad. Like, you know, like, oh, we got to get this guy. Or Hillary Clinton is after me. Like, she's got problems with her emails, not your ashwagandha thing. Like, yeah.
So Jim, now you're out. You're out. So and we appreciate you spilling all the secrets here. I mean, this is just, you're a great storyteller. This has been, I think it's not just like entertaining and interesting for guys, but I think it's really important because when it comes to like bettering yourself, like if you're a guy, you have pain around women, pain around fitness, whatever, making money, you're in this space, you're watching this video because you care about one or all of those things.
Right.
And you are going to get, if you look enough for the answers will find you through a lot of these ads, which are tracking what you're searching.
Right.
And you need to understand, you need to develop the discernment to know what's real and what isn't.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, some guys, I'm sure a lot of people went through this entire thing because it's been so engaging, but I think almost to a certain extent, there's been well, why am I listening to Jim? You know, what is the, well, this is the message here. This is the likelihood of you, like, the fact that the audience has the opportunity to hear what you experience behind the scenes. Like, I know that this stuff is scammy, but even me listening to some of this stuff, like, I had no idea. Like, it's like, we have no idea what to sell, make something up, you know.
All the time. In health, the time. Even worse. Supplements were like, oh, we'll just, you know, what's the big popular hook right now? Like, oh, yeah, well, turmeric will blow the weight off. Like, you don't know that.
And so it's just that guys, they really, really need to vet. You have to look for authentic individuals, people who are not, like, you're not getting hit with this spammy stuff that really, like, and you have to feel for yourself how it preys on your emotions. Like, would you say, Jim, that if a guy is looking at a piece of copy and he starts to feel like a huge sort of rush of anxiety, would you say it's a big warning sign? What would you say with this? Like,
it really depends. And most of I would say from most of the followers, if they're on like Twitter Guru or in the success stuff, likely, yeah. I mean, because there are some stuff where it's hard because it just might naturally hit you, right? Like, something you might say or something Alex Cortez might say just naturally might, like Alex might just say, unfat yourself at the right time, and someone's going to be anxious about it. So, but that's a good impetus to go improve that thing. But the more they try to force that anxiety, the more that kind of thing happens, then you kind of got to be looking at the tangibles a little bit more. What is this guy claiming? Like, what's the merits of the claims? Instead of going on the merits of the claims, what are the actual results this guy is getting here? And do I really need this? Mm-hmm. Because they love, like, the more, like, if you don't invest in this, you're a loser. I mean, that's obviously said very differently, right? Like Mike Cernovich had a great sales letter a couple of years ago about, like, look, if you're coming on this trip or whatever, you need to get in shape or fuck off. Yeah. And Andrew Tate, in a way, is very good at this, about this. Like, I'm not dealing with losers, but they say it with a sense of swagger, right? But there are guys who would just, they try to force it. It's hard to find it, right? But it's the more like, if you don't do this, the more you don't do this, you're a loser kind of thing. But guess what? We make sure you're loser proof, but now you don't want the deal. So it's kind of that they kind of keep tossing it on. That's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, and what I'd say is, like, to distinguish Mike and Andrew would be that they really, like, don't want to be around a loser. Like, they really don't give a. And so you can sort of, like, when they say it with that swagger, it's coming from an authentic place. Whereas if it's kind of more scammy, it's like it's kind of like a artificial push-pull. Like, I don't want to be around a loser, but you're not a loser, are you? Like you.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that. Like, real winners invest, and here's what we've got right here. So that kind of, the more that is sort of hammered, that's a bit of a red flag. The more hyperbole sort of thing, where you can't quite ground what the guy is doing, other than, like, and then wild claims, like vague claims, stretch claims are a big thing. Like, oh, I've helped over 10,000 people. I mean, I've written a lot of stretch claims, and I can make someone, like, you can meet me right. I could find someone and go back to the old school and met someone who's like, well, I only have 100 clients. Well, I can figure out how to turn that into 20,000 on your list. Not it's figure out is how to get them 20,000 people, but that they helped so they helped 100 people. How many events have you gone to? How many conversations? Like, okay, well, I can probably stretch this into 10,000 and legal. Like, that you talked because, you were also mentioned on this other email list for an affiliate thing, and that list is in front of 30,000 people. So we can stretch it that you've helped this many people because the email went out. And if legally, if they're going to get us, okay, we'll go on the opens. And did they use a swipe? So, like, there's these legal dances to get down into, like, these things. And I remember even doing, like, these legal, like, little these little stretch claims. But if you find out those kind of vague numbers, I helped over 1 million people. Then you go on their Twitter and they have, like, they might have like 100,000 followers, but there's no interaction.
Right.
Or their Instagram is all, like, platitudes. Or they have no. I mean, that's another thing. Like, if they are, it's almost like if they don't shit post, they might not be real.
Right.
Like, a lot of these guys, like, you don't see Garrett White out there like, fuck you, Nassim Taleb.
Right? Him getting blocked by people.
Yeah, you don't see him trying to, you don't try to see him getting into, or even just talking shit with, like, in his corner.
Yeah,
you don't see that with those guys, right? So that's kind of a red flag, because they're so obsessed with conversions, and if they can't kind of shit post or joke or in some realm, that's another big sign. Yeah, it is tough to tell. I mean, I always say, try to look who's behind the curtain.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. Is be a little more hard-headed that you can do it on your own. I mean, experts in finding wisdom is fantastic, and a lot of people should seek that. But you got to look to see what is behind the curtain. Because like Tim Ferriss behind the curtain is way different than the Tim Ferriss in the podcast show.
Yeah, and I would I'd add one more thing. I mean, if the product promises to solve all your problems,
Oh yeah, that's a huge thing.
it's a huge one. If like the less effort it demands from you, the more wary you should be.
Right, and the more it sounds like an airport book.
Yeah.
Of secrets. Yeah, you got to be wary of that shit.
Because I mean, let's honestly speaking, I mean, when it comes to clients, like there's going to be 10% who don't really get too many results because they themselves don't really show up. They're not really there. And you have a wide range of outcomes for individuals based on partially how much they show up to engage with you, but also partially about where they're at. I mean, there's a lot of these, and so you have to be just honest about that. Like, I don't expect anybody who gets my masterclass, like, you got my masterclass now, it's automatically done for you. You got everything, you know, it's got all these tools in it for guys to help themselves, but you still have to apply them. And frankly speaking, it's going to be more applicable for some guys. It's going to be absolutely life-changing, and for other guys it's going to be like, oh yeah, this was helpful. And there's maybe going to be a few who are like, well, you know, maybe it's not for me. And that's just how it is. It's how it always is.
That's the nature. They're not like, they're not haters or scam. Yeah, it's just the nature. Like some things it's going to be great, and other times it was good enough. It helped a lot. Yeah, and there's always going to be the handful of just which won't connect.
Yeah. And I mean, I've gotten so many products over the years. I mean, sometimes you're like, what the fuck is in this? Like,
there's tons of those.
Like, I got like a PDF. Like,
oh yeah, those.
Yeah,
there's one left PDF. Oh my god, I mean, in the health stuff.
One PDF left.
In the health thing, we would literally Google recipes. Because we'd be like, oh shit, the recipe book for the whole program is like, this recipe will eviscerate the fat off your body. And we're like, before we launch, it's like, oh, quick, like we'd run a glitch in the course and like Google recipes, like keto recipes, and just basically almost like screenshot it and put it up like, there it is. And we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like,
oh man.
No look.
Jim, I think this interview has really been the real penetrating the secret society of pickup artists. I think that this is the real deal here.
Oh, sad world. It's a crazy world, unique world that it was.
So, real quick before we wrap up here, tell us, like, what are you up to right now? So you got a copywriting program coming out. You got a reading program, you said, as well. Just tell a little bit about that, about your services and where guys can find you.
Yeah, so I'm at jimclair.com. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've kind of left copy, but I still, I really still like direct marketing. So I talk a lot about success and kind of exposing the gurus. That's on there. I have a newsletter, a paid newsletter right now, and then I'm hoping to get to paid articles here for a little bit. But yeah, it still teaches copy. Then I have a copy course coming out. I stumbled into this will sound like a sales pitch. I stumbled into my drop. I found a binder. An ancient binder.
The black binder, right?
The black binder. It was 5 ClickBank #1s. No, I stumbled into my Dropbox for most of the time that I was with Venus Factor. I kept a whole bunch of outline structures like these Excel spreadsheets, and then how to, the VSLs we were trying to write it and broke it down. And I was like, so it was almost like notes to myself, then actual instructions of what I need to be doing. Because we were like, if we had a Google thing that shut us down, we had to turn a VSL around in a couple hours,
right? Very
fast to get it back up. So it's like a rush, like, oh, we got shut down. Can you write one out right now? So it was like, I had to get like, it couldn't just like, oh, here's a VSL. Oh, it's like, no, we have $10 million out this month behind it. We need something that can do it. So, so I have all the notes on how to do it. And I just found it in my Dropbox. I'm like, oh shit, I could definitely, turn this. So I have that. That's what I'm going to be start working on probably in the next couple of weeks. Don't know how I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to do an exhaustive reading course. So whatever. So that's the other thing I'm talking about. I said whatever I'm doing about reading has struck a chord. Some people say it's like people who like to read, but they don't want to read like the 72 books you must read before you die bullshit.
Yeah.
Whatever it is I'm doing, people really, really like it. So I just kind of give my take on the book or my conversation with it, and kind of so like the success guys are wrong. Whatever it is, people really like it. So
I mean, just to clarify with it, so for the reading thing, this is the books that you've been reading. And
yeah, the books that I've been reading, and then whatever I'm doing. So my reading newsletter tells them how what kind of my process is and how I go about it. And then the reading, those are the reading newsletter is paid. The other reading part is just I read the book and I kind of give it a breakdown, or whatever it is. I just kind of riff on it, and whatever it is about it, people are really liking that. So I love it. I'd rather talk books than how-to headlines.
Yeah, I mean, and these are books, all sorts of different books, or are they books just in the kind of business copy space?
No, there are all sorts of books. So there's not many business copy books. I've only really talked about one. I think it was like Wanting by Luke Burgess. But other than that, it's like Raymond Chandler books, Aristotle.
Yeah.
Thomas Sowell. I love Thomas Sowell. The Power Broker, right? So all various kinds of books. And then I kind of give a picture of like, here's a haul. Like I just bought all these books and here's why I kind of got them. So whatever I'm doing, people love it. So I'll keep doing it.
I mean, you're almost reading as much as Ty.
That's right. Book of Jet.
Jim, this was a real pleasure.
It was an honor, Pat. I really love this. It was a lot of fun.
I'm going to have all the links provided for you can get on Jim's list and, connect with Jim for all the services, etc. But thank you so much for this, and look forward to seeing you on Twitter.
Thanks. It was just a total honor.